Welcome to the Demi Taste podcast, where we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. But usually we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey are the conversations that we get to have. And every once in a while, we have a topic which isn't whiskey based at all. So today, our topic is gin, featuring the distiller of Big Gin, Alex Myers, also known as Alejandro.
Thanks.
Welcome, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Talk about
And
some.
I'm joined. Oh, sorry.
There you
Yeah. Already messing up on the intro. Yeah. And I'm joined by my co host, Duckville Platypus. And today we have, for the second time in a row, a full set of samples that we both have. So we'll be able to do a full on tasting today. So hopefully we'll get into that before too long and before it gets too late. But of course, since this is a whiskey podcast, I imagine most of the regular audience doesn't know a whole lot about gin, unless you are general spirits fans, as Phil and I tend to be, although we prefer whiskey and we focus most of our energy on whiskey. There's a lot to know about gin, and Alex is extremely knowledgeable. I've learned quite a lot from him. I believe, did we meet somewhere around 2 years ago, Alex?
I think so. Yeah. It's been a minute for sure.
I think it was sometime around this time of year, maybe April or so. And Joseph O'Sullivan happened to be visiting you. So
Yeah.
Big Gin is a product of Captive Spirits, although they've sort of rebranded publicly as just Big Gin. If you've seen old bottles, you'll see the Captive Spirits sigil. If you see new bottles, you'll see a sigil that's a B and a G. That is, one and the same company. Captive Spirits is owned by, or I guess, yeah, under Hood River Distillers, which is the same company that Clear Creek Distillery is under. So anybody who are regular watchers of this podcast will know that we are big fans of Clear Creek around here. Namely, the fruit brandies and McCarthy's are some of our favorite stuff. And I'm pleased to say that the products that Alex makes are no exception to that. The Hood River Distillers portfolio continues to be excellent, even in the direction of gin and other spirits. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day about Hood River Distillers, and we were talking about the lower priced products, which, of course, their sort of angle on that was, yeah, but Hood River Distiller makes a bunch of things that aren't so great. And it's like, yeah, but like, look at the price points. Like they're going for a market segment, and actually they've covered really a lot of the market, from the sort of bottom shelf vodka all the way to premium whiskey and everything in between. And I think of Big Gin as a gin product that is not priced too terribly high, but is definitely of a quality that is middle shelf or higher. It's a really tremendous gin, especially when you get into the barrel aged gins. Alex, your audio seems to have cut out. Uh-oh. Are you seeing that also, Phil?
Yes.
I think we might be getting like a replay of the first part of the video. Alex, are you still there? Nope, not hearing you. Uh-oh. Can't hear you yet. Man, I thought we sorted out all of our technical difficulties pretty much before we went live. This always happens. It wouldn't be a Demi Taste stream if we didn't have technical difficulties. All I can think probably is try to rejoin, like maybe close the website and just reopen it, and we'll add you back. In the meantime, thanks everyone for joining. I see that we've got quite a lot of people in attendance today. We've got Rich and Genji. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being in the chat.
Really quick while we have a moment, because we talked briefly about the changing of the branding on the bottles. On the top of the bottles currently, let me see if I can get the light to pick it up well.
Yep. Oh, let me zoom in on you.
And if I can get the light to show it without being so reflective that it washes out. That's what the current sigil at the top of uh, the the bottles is. It's a B&G, and this is the older
Oh,
sigil.
excellent. So you saved the wrap for us there. I actually all of the capsule wraps are that I had are have been thrown away. But those sort of the like the foil engraved patterns that are on the labels.
I I have a weird confession to make.
Oh, you
I
saved them.
Yeah, I had a
Nice.
craft project in mind a long time ago. I was going to build a bar top and have I was going to trim them down and set them in epoxy on my bar top.
Oh, that's a good
And then
idea.
I never got around to it.
Alex, by the way, we still don't have audio from you. I think you probably should just like close out of Safari and then rejoin the website, and we'll just add you back to the stream.
Hey Joe, good to see you.
Hey, Joe. We were just giving you a shout out.
And yeah, the pawn has noticed the Powers Rye on my little side shelf over here.
You know what's funny is I had always thought that this shelf behind me, where I put most of my whiskey that I'm currently doing anything with, would actually show up like in the stream ever. But I realized some time ago that I actually need to like swap the decorations to behind me and move the bottles to that way because they just like never show up on stream. Then of course you've got the other set of samples and bottles on my desk over there, which I didn't used to have in screen at all because I had my camera cropped down.
Trying to decide what would be fun to
Yeah,
put
thanks for
next
joining, Joe.
box.
Sorry for the delay. We seem to be having some technical difficulties with Alex not having any audio coming through after about the first 4 minutes. So thanks all for your patience. We'll just riff on this a little bit more. So I have the old. Here, I'll zoom in. Alex gave this bottle to me when I was visiting the distillery and said, "Would you like a vintage Big Gin?" And as you can see underneath Big Gin, you see that C and the S, the Captive Spirits logo. And also, they say Captive Spirits down at the bottom of the label. I think Captive Spirits is just such a fantastic brand name, or a good name for a distillery because, like, no pun intended, it captures quite a lot of and yes, and as a matter of fact, Phil, those minis, so the reason that Alex gave me this bottle is they were trying to move old stock when they changed the labels, and those minis are also Captive Spirits minis. Yeah, which is like that's a
I
that's a
don't have
a
giant
lovely
hands.
mini version of the label there.
I do really
Oops.
love these labels. I think that they are a fantastic design.
Yeah, I
The,
wonder. I don't know if we're getting like different resolutions between you and me. Oh, my camera doesn't want to zoom in on that, so yeah, yours was better.
I just generally think that that these label designs are oh, oh there we go are really beautiful, understated, elegant, etc. I'm also the nerd that insisted that the first thing we did on the show was talk about labels, and we did like a 3 hour video on what makes a good label, and keywords and whatnot. And I think that Big Gin is another example of a really well crafted label because it tells you exactly what it is. It is a distinctive, visually identifiable label, and with the exception of on this one, it's a little bit dark, and with the black font, it's a little bit hard to read. That's one of those things where you've got to you run out of good color combinations after a while. You know what I mean?
That is true. Yeah. I like that even after the change. I want to say the first time I saw the new label for Big Gin, I was like, "Oh, I like how they went foil on like more of the bottle and like They've got, so here's this is one of the ones that we'll get into. This is the aged 2 years in American single malt barrel and then 1.5 years in a PX sherry cask. And you can see in the capsule wrapped around the neck, you've got this foil of the botanicals that are used in the gin. Oh, Alex is back.
All right, can you hear me now?
Whoops. Yes, we can.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, the foil was definitely a change up, and definitely makes the bottle pop a little bit more. It makes the label pop a little bit more.
Yep.
Something you could see on the shelf, something that kind of catches people's eye. And it's really pretty.
All right, so now that we have Alex back, we can let him speak for the brand a little bit more. But before that, as usual, I like to ask my guests and my co-host what they're drinking today. And I, as usual, have the leftovers of my sort of mid-afternoon coffee. This happens to be from Mozart's Coffee in Austin, Texas.
I've got just a tiny itty bitty little bit of tea left in my cup.
And then I'm drinking Timber City ginger beer, a little non-alcoholic ginger beer.
Nice.
Actually, it's from Seattle. It's pretty local. So yeah, it's something nice.
You got that in the big gin mug, which
Mhm.
doesn't have to say probably not whiskey or probably not gin. It just literally says that it's gin.
Yeah.
So there's maybe not a great way to segue into this, but a while back, Alex, you told me that you were going dry for a little while. And as I understand it, that streak is still continuing.
Yeah. It's actually coming up on a year. I think last February is when I decided to take a break, and it's been really good. It's been my I guess my health and my energy levels have been up, and I'm able to get I'm more productive about it. But it's just been it's been an interesting experience to work in the industry, work alongside brewers and distillers and bartenders and kind of everything that is encompassing alcohol. So it's been a little bit of I wouldn't say it's like an extremely hard struggle, but it's been good. So it's coming up on a year now, and I plan on continuing it as long as I can. But yeah, it's been definitely new. I'm now 40, so it's so I've been drinking since I've been 21. So hopefully we'll see how long it goes.
Nice. And we, as regular watchers of our podcast will know, and members of the Whiskey Lodge will know, we really value our dry time. We talk about dry days, even where it's like, I have a rule: I only drink 3 days in a row and then take a day off. If I must break that rule because of an event and I have to do 4 days in a row, then I will take 2 days off. And then, of course, we do our quarterly dry week. Many of us, I believe, participated in Dry January this year. I don't think that anybody has gone particularly longer than a month or two without sort of announcing that they're quitting entirely. So, it's great to see that somebody who's actively distilling in the industry is also dry. And not only are you distilling, now this is going to be way off topic, and I hope you're okay with me mentioning this, but Alex is invested in a bar in Seattle, is a co-owner of the Rendezvous.
Yeah.
And that's been keeping Alex quite busy, as I understand it. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what's happening there?
It's been like a dual-edged sword. I've been taking care of the distillery and taking care of the bar downtown. It's good. I mean, it's just I'm more of like a silent partner. If not, like I pull a little bit of time there a week, and it's just something that I've always wanted to get into. Distilling is a passion project, and owning a bar was a goal of mine through my 20s and my 30s. So now that I'm 40 and I'm an adult now, I get to own a business, and it's been good. We are kind of a I call it a dive club. We're a kind of a dive bar, and we do a lot of DJ events and live music, and it's just kind of like it's a good place to be creative and do some of the stuff that I don't get to do at the distillery, like come up with cocktails and be face fronting and talk to people. And I get to talk about products, and I get to talk about obviously HRD products because we do carry a good handful of them. So yeah, it's been good. It's been about a year of being an investor in a business. So between the two places, it keeps me busy, and I really don't have time to drink. So it's kind of another reason why I decided to kind of take a hiatus from drinking as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you don't get a chance to design cocktails very much at Big Gin. But I want to ask you about that, dig in a little bit. So when you go visit Big Gin, which is sort of, it's anyone who's familiar with Seattle, you might know Fremont and sort of Lake Union area. So Big Gin is sort of located just south of Fremont, south of the Fremont Bridge, if I'm not mistaken.
Technically, it's closer to the Ballard Bridge.
The Ballard Bridge.
Yeah, so we're technically located closer to Ballard in the Queen Anne neighborhood. But I would say it's just basically centrally located in the Seattle greater area. We have North Seattle, like Fremont and Ballard and Wallingford and the University District, and go all the way up to Shoreline. And then just south of us is Queen Anne, and then South Lake Union and the downtown area. So we have a very good location for our distillery, and we're very lucky to be located in it's a coastal transportation shipping yard is the area that we are located in, which is super rad to be located in a shipping yard next to some water, great views, always something going on. It's never a dull moment here at the distillery. So it's yeah, it's been good, and we've been located here since 2017. So it's been a minute, and it's been really good to us.
Nice. I can second. It's a really easy place to get to. I end up stopping in to visit Alex a couple times a year when I happen to have an errand in the area. I usually bring him lunch or coffee or something, and then we sit down and chat. So that's always fun. I can definitely recommend visiting. If I'm not mistaken, you're open Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays in the tasting room.
Actually, at the moment, right now, we're taking a break, and we're going to be closed until probably the spring. We're kind of reevaluating the tasting room, and going to be reopening with a good plan next year. And we're going to be hosting a lot of events and tastings and people in the tasting room as much as possible. So look forward to the kind of the grand reopening of it. So yeah, that'll come probably in like spring or summer.
Awesome. Okay, so if you go there now without an appointment, you're probably not going to get anything.
I would say, yeah, but I would say get a hold of the Instagram or on our website, and you could possibly make an appointment. It would be with me personally. So you get you get that having a personal tasting and a tour with the distiller. But that's kind of that's kind of what we offer as of right now. But we'll be open to the public here in the next couple of months.
Cool. Something to look forward to. So I definitely recommend following Big Gin on Instagram, which starts with an underscore, if I'm not mistaken, _big_gin.
I think that's correct.
Do I have that right? Yeah. Okay. I kind of wonder, that's probably not worth getting into it, but I kind of wonder why you needed the underscore on the beginning.
I believe probably because there was someone else that had something similar to it.
Yeah, it's probably the boring answer. Big Gin wasn't available.
I mean, if you put the two together, it's Biggin. So there's got to be someone with Biggin, you know, something along those lines. So I think, yeah, it was just what was available.
Yeah. Okay, so assuming that the tasting room there isn't going away, there are cocktails there which feature Big Gin.
Correct.
I'm guessing that when you said you'd be able to work on cocktail specs, you sort of meant outside of your own distilled products, being able to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of. I mean, I always tell people about 95% of cocktails have gin in them. So after that, like it gives a chance to kind of spread my wings and do some other stuff. Using Timberline vodka or using McCarthy's or using Trails and bourbon or just like some different spirits in general, rum, tequila. So it's yeah, it kind of it scratches an itch for sure. So that's a good thing.
I'm gonna take a quick break here and kudos Genji for finishing dry January successfully. Um, Phil was talking about the bottles that were behind him and mentioned that he moved the powers, which of course Rich was happy to see, and replaced it with Virginia Distilling Company, who we'll have on Thursday. Amanda Beckwith, so look forward to that. And the Bartlemay has stopped in to chat and has offered up a lovely compliment. Alex is a legend.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And I have to I guess I have to agree with that. Like pretty much everything. So Alex distills gin, and Alex has occasionally experimented with other products, which I won't name. But everything that I've tried that Alex has made has been really high tier stuff, even just the experiments. So I look forward to trying whatever new things Alex comes up with, gin and otherwise.
We're always I'm always like experimenting. I'm always trying to come up with something new. But I think yeah, gin is still in my heart, and we'll continue to be making gin for in the future. We'll see what happens though in the next couple of years. Who knows?
Yeah, I sort of I've always been interested in what else besides Big Gin may possibly come out of Captive Spirits. Because when I learned that's such a cool name, I mean, just imagine sticking Captive Spirits on a series of products, and like I don't know why it's such a cool name to me. Maybe I'm just deluded, but like to me, Captive Spirits, like you could stick a ghost ship on the bottle,
Oh yeah.
like you could do maybe a genie in the lamp, something like that, right? There's so many possibilities for branding with Captive Spirits, and having a portfolio to slap that branding on would be just wonderful. And
It is,
also,
yeah, it's a very well thought out name, and it does really encompass like spirits in general. And because, I mean, honestly, through the distillation, I mean, you are capturing spirits, and it just is like it's pretty perfect.
absolutely. So not everybody has Big Gin. Big Gin is definitely everybody around Seattle, and I think even in Portland, I've seen Big Gin on bars, back bars, and even furniture stores.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of everywhere. It's a staple of this area, but it is a relatively local product. So I think that a lot of our audience has probably never seen it on the store shelves. I guess an obvious follow up to that is there any way for people who would like to order from you to get your products?
Um, so outside of Seattle, we are looking at e-commerce. Hood River Distillers is signing up for it now, so that should be coming available pretty soon. And then after that, we are obviously in a bunch of different places around Seattle. Total Wine is a big advocate of ours, and they have a couple single barrels that they've purchased in the last couple of years, and those are pretty special. So we definitely advocate for like going and shopping at Total Wine. But other than that, we're pretty much in the Pacific Northwest area, very strong, and then it kind of scarce out since from there. I know we have some placements in Colorado. Recently, the Death and Co. at the Shamble Hotel in Denver, I believe, is carrying a single barrel and our product as well. And then we're just kind of seeing where we can expand different areas, different markets. But yeah, no, it's definitely a very strong Pacific Northwest product.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground without really talking about the gin itself. So, as I've mentioned before, I think a lot of our regular audience probably not too into gin, but if they're tuned into this, they're at least a little bit curious. So, Alex, could you take us through what exactly gin is and how you make yours?
Gin is so we make a London dry gin, and the category is defined by taking a distilled spirit similar to vodka. You can make vodka from anything that you want to, apples, corn, wheat, and then you redistill that with juniper. Juniper is the main ingredient in gin. It has to be in there to be considered gin. And so it's a distilled spirit redistilled with juniper. And that's basically the definition of gin, or London dry gin to be specific. There's some contemporary gins out there now that kind of take that and they don't redistill it. They either distill their own with the juniper or infuse it. But what we do here at Big Gin is we take a neutral grain spirit that's similar. It's made from corn. It's a very high proof vodka, and we redistill that in these stills behind me. So these are our Vendome pot stills, and we fill these up with 100 gallons of 100 proof vodka, and then I pitch in all the ingredients, which is, let me grab a couple of these jars. We have juniper, which is we get from Macedonia, Albania, and Italy, and this is our kind of our main star. We use a lot of juniper in each distillation. We source them from those places because we consider the juniper to be perfect from those areas where they're not too dry, not too plump and sugary. But we also pull from 3 areas so that we get a consistency. I'm always keeping at least a year's worth of botanicals on hand in order to kind of keep the distillery going. You never want to have something like a fire or a infestation destroying crops from a specific field that we get. So we pull from a couple different areas. The next ingredient that we use is coriander, and coriander is actually the secret ingredient in a lot of gins. It's pretty much, you'll find every gin has juniper and it has coriander. So we definitely use the next ingredient is coriander. We get that from Morocco, Canada. We use a couple different ingredient sources. We use My Spice Sage out of New York. We use Mountain Rose herbs. We use different places that kind of get different ingredients, different botanicals, depending on where they come from and the quality that we're looking for. We use something called Tasmanian pepperberry, and that is probably our most unique ingredient. And I'm pretty sure there's only maybe 1 or 2 other gins in the world that use it. But I source it directly from Tasmania, from a small little farm, and it's been a really good. It's like a spicy note, so it really kind of like makes our gin stand apart from a lot of other gins because it has that nice different style of peppercorn in there. And we use a lot of spicy ingredients. We use grains of paradise. We use cardamom. We use cinnamon. And all of these are kind of hard kernel, spicy baking spices, which gives our gin a nice spicy backbone. We don't use a lot of floral ingredients, so it's not too floral. But we do get some of that stuff, some of that flavor profile from the orris root that we use, a little bit from the angelica. The angelica is nice and woodsy as well. And then and orange peel too. We use a lot of bitter orange peel, and those are all the ingredients that we use in gin and Big Gin. We don't use a lot. We just use quality ingredients, and we let them stand out as much as they possibly can. And our gin is like nice and savory and spicy and obviously juniper heavy for all the traditional gin drinkers. But then it works well in different cocktails and different cocktails, and makes a great gin and tonic, makes a great Collins. The distillation process, because we use pot stills, makes a pretty robust gin, very full of flavor. So it cuts through a lot of the ingredients. Your Campari and your Negronis, your lemon juice and your Tom Collins. So we don't really bury our gin in cocktails. We try to make a gin that complements ingredients, that doesn't get buried in there. So yeah, it's definitely a full flavored gin, and we yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Thanks for walking us through that. And
Yeah.
I have to say that especially I think the Tasmanian pepperberry, um, I want to say that I can detect that pepperiness, and that pops through in almost any cocktail that I've tried with Big Gin so far.
Yeah.
And I think it even carries through in the barrel aged gins that are 4 years plus in age. It's a really distinctive note that does carry through.
I think it kind of pops out a little bit when barrel aging too. A lot of the baking spices and the orange peel come through when we start filling barrels with the gin. Um, the the wood and the juniper kind of mellow out. They bind very well. And they're very harmonious, and then all the other botanicals get a moment to shine a little bit more. So I definitely, once you get into the barrel aged stuff, it becomes a little bit more baking spice heavy, Tasmanian pepperberry heavy too. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Phil, I saw you wanted to ask a question earlier. Did I sort of cover that, or did you still want to
I
ask?
was going to say earlier that you can order from Hood River Distillers online. They deliver to the bulk of the U.S. currently. There's a list of states that they do not deliver to, and we'll drop a link in the description below. I just wanted to point that out that if you can't purchase it locally, if you are in a state that allows home delivery of alcohol, it is likely that Hood River Distillers can deliver to you.
Yeah, and that's a pretty new thing too. That's something we started like this year, late last year. So it's a good thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It helps the people, your fans across the country, across the world, even potentially. Although I'm guessing you're not to online retailing to Europe yet,
No.
etc. But it definitely helps your fans in the Whiskey Lodge be able to get their hands on Hood River products.
Yeah, everything's so like localized. Everything is, now you go to different cities and they all have their own local distilleries. So it's nice to be able to like I don't get a lot of gins from the East Coast, even though there's a ton of them out there. I don't get to see them too much, even through like bars and restaurants. We have like maybe one restaurant in Seattle that's like a gin focused bar called Jolie, and they search for those gins, but for most of the other people, we just kind of get stuff that's like on the West Coast, and obviously your standards, Tencray, Bombay, Beefeater, stuff like that. But with e-commerce now, it's really nice because then it kind of fills in the gap of the whole country and being able to purchase these products.
Okay, I have a couple of questions to follow up on gin production.
Okay,
So first of all, you mentioned that you make a London dry style gin. I
correct.
don't think I've ever seen any other style of gin. Could you elaborate on what makes a gin a London dry and what other types there are?
So a London Dry is just taking that already distilled vodka and then distilling it with botanicals. There are like your Old Tom gins. Old Tom gins are pretty much the same process, except sometimes they might add a little bit of sugar afterwards, or they might add sweeter botanicals in there to kind of give it a little bit more of a sweetness. Um, and then there are contemporary gins that add other botanicals in there that are on a heavier note than the juniper. There's one that adds cucumber and rose hips, and that's kind of like their main focus on the flavor profile of the gin. There's a lot of gin companies out there now going for pink gins that have fruit in them. They're going for different styles of gin, say like a Southwest gin, adding aloe or like a prickly pear in there, and then so like your traditional London dry gins are technically redistilled gins that are heavy on the juniper.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. And for you mentioned that a lot of your spices are the sort of hard spices like cinnamon and so on. Do you I guess I can imagine three ways that you would infuse uh those spices into gin. One would be to put them whole directly into the liquid that you're distilling
Correct.
and
That's
sort
how we
of let
do it.
them. Okay. And
Yeah.
I guess the other way would possibly be to grind them up. So I was going to ask if you grind any of them up.
Yeah, the Tasmanian pepperberry. We that's like the only ingredient that we like process.
Hmm.
Everything else is whole kernels or chunks of like cinnamon bark. But the Tasmanian pepperberry I put through a grinder and grind that up a little bit, and then everything else is just I get it delivered to me in the package, and it comes the way that we distill it. And there is a couple different ways. There's a steep and boil, which is infusing the liquid that you're going to be distilling, usually overnight with the botanicals, and then starting the stills the next day and distilling on top of the botanicals. You can also strain those botanicals out that day and just distill the liquid infused. And that's like it's kind of a steep and boil. And what we do is more of just a boil. We don't leave the ingredients in there overnight, or we don't let it infuse. I come in the morning, I pitch the ingredients into the still, I fire the stills up, and 2 hours later I'm producing big gin. And so there's also vapor baskets, which are separate from the liquid. That's a little basket that holds all the botanicals. And as the vapor climbs up the still, it climbs through the botanicals, and it catches the essential oils, and it pushes the essential oils out of the botanicals using vapor. And you get a much softer flavor with like a vapor basket. You get a much stronger, more oily flavor when you put them directly in the liquid, or you steep them overnight. So it's a good process, but it's also it's up to the distiller. It's up to the recipe and how you really want to do it. We decided to do the process the way we do it because it's just me. And if I were to let it steep in there overnight, who knows what happens? And I might not be able to get to the stills the next day for some reason, and that's kind of a wasted batch. Throwing them directly in there in the liquid allows for a rich flavor and an extraction rate that's a little bit higher than using a vapor basket. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, and it gives us our flavor that we're looking for.
All right. I thought I had a third question about production. Phil, do you have any questions to ask about general gin production?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, okay. So here was my follow up, I guess. So, given that you are dry now, how do you go about doing sensory analysis to ensure consistent batches?
It's the same every time that it's always 100 gallons of 100 proof. It's always 10 pounds of juniper. It's always I spend a lot of time just weighing out botanicals. Also, I spit. Like I'll taste and spit, much like people that are doing wine tastings that have to try a ton of different wines every day. I'll do a lot of like taste and spitting. But at this point now, I mean, I can smell it. I can look at it, and again, it's the same every single time. we do a lot of blending for consistency. I'll make a large tank and then blend it together and then send that down for bottling. Production method, I can make 1,000 cases of big gin in a very short amount of time. So that's kind of why people get kind of like, they're like, well, you work by yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, through the distillation process and the blending process, we were able to produce a lot of gin with a very small space and a very small stills. It's very different from making whiskey. You're really trying to pull all the alcohol you can out of the whiskey. In order to get every drop of it, we pull a certain amount because we're trying to get a certain amount of botanical flavor, and we don't want to, because there's the heads, hearts, and tails. We don't want to go into our tails because that starts to produce off flavors. We pitch our heads because there's a poison in that. So we stick to our hearts, and we collect the same amount every time, and that is really just the start to our blending recipe. I tend to use more botanicals in the distillation process because we will be thinning them out with more alcohol and more water after the distillation. It's a very common two-shot method in gin production. A lot of big companies use it. We took a lot of inspiration from Beefeater and Tanqueray and Bombay. So it's definitely something that they use in their production as well.
Okay, so I want to dig in a little bit more on that point. So I've heard you describe before what comes off of your stills as a gin concentrate. That
Yes,
you
yeah.
basically
I use a lot
distill.
more ingredients in the
Yeah.
stills, and then as I distill, it's a much stronger flavor. And then as I blend down, it blends and thins out the ingredients a little bit in order to be the flavor profile that you find in the bottle. What we and that allows me to just make a lot of product with a very little labor and manpower, which is obviously is good for business. And it allows me to kind of keep an eye on everything because I'm making every drop of it.
Real handmade gin.
Real, yeah. I put my finger in every single batch.
So I think I heard you say something. I wasn't sure if I've heard this before about gin making. You dilute your gin concentrate with water to get it down to proof. Did you say you also potentially add alcohol?
Correct. We use a two-shot method, and it has we use actually a little bit more of the neutral grain spirit that we distill. We blend a little bit more into there, and then add water to that. So kind of it's again, it's just more of a like the ability to make a larger amount with very little stills. Our stills are only 100 gallons, which is pretty small in the distilling world. When you talk about whiskey stills, they're like usually like 500 gallons plus. Some of them are upwards of 1,000 gallons. I mean, if you look in like Scotch distilleries at the Foresight distills, and if you've been to Westland in Seattle, like they have huge stills. Copperworks as well. We're a very small operation, so we use very small stills. And if we wanted to expand an operation, we just buy more 100-gallon stills, because honestly, that is part of the recipe. Different stills, different product, and this is what makes Big Gin, is using these stills behind me to create that product. And if I change the stills up, if I change the recipe up, if I change the base product or the base alcohol that we use up, we're changing the recipe. So we got to keep it all the same, and we just kind of expand from there using the same equipment.
So perhaps an obvious question, but you start with grain neutral spirit. The base for gin doesn't have to be a grain neutral spirit, I believe, as you said.
No, I mean some people they'll use different products. Some people make their own base spirit, so they use something like they'll use apples. They'll make a couple different kinds of spirits and then test to see which one works best for them. We use 100% corn. we were always like, when in America, drink corn.
Hmm.
We have abundance of it. It's very much, again, it's very much of an American product, but yeah, different distilleries, different products, use different methods. So they, you could pretty much whatever you can make vodka out of, you could pretty much make gin out of as well.
Okay, so we've just been moved around a bit. Were
It
you
did.
going to get something?
I had to get a phone charger.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I didn't want my phone to die in the middle of talking. So
I thought you were about to get a like a demonstrative sample of something.
no. I mean, it would be kind of useless to pull a sample.
Yeah, no,
I'd just be
like show us
oh.
the little
Yeah, look at this clear
No,
liquid.
I mean, I guess from here you can kind of see we get these tanks, these big tanks behind me. We receive and ship the bulk gin in these tanks. So one tank right now is full of that 100. I receive it as 190 proof neutral grain spirit too. So it's almost like pure alcohol. I mean, I would say it's close to Everclear, but Everclear actually has more flavor than what we use.
It's probably a
And
good thing.
it's more, yeah, it's a little bit less flavorless. We use something like similar to like we call it a blank canvas, because like we're really just looking for something to add all that botanical flavor to. And I think I mean, when talking about gin, I think it's the botanicals that are the most important thing too. The neutral grain spirit is just the vessel. It's like it would be like the cracker that you eat peanut butter with. I'm just trying to get that peanut butter as much as I can. So it's that's when we talk about neutral grain spirit, I'm always like, yeah, it's just like vodka. I mean, it's vodka.
Yeah.
But like honestly, different distilleries kind of pride themselves on what they use as their neutral grain spirit, or their base alcohol. So some people use apples are big in the Pacific Northwest. So there's a couple of distilleries that use apples out here, which is creates a softer distillate. So you're going to get a little bit of a softer gin, but depending on how you process it, it could be super flavorful as well too. A lot of people use winter wheat in the Pacific Northwest, because that's something that grows here, and is very popular, especially on the east side. And that creates it's like a vanilla flavor, or like it's like a marshmallow flavor, and they that's like just another flavor profile within the gin. So there's a little bit of a give and take of we try to use something that's not so flavorful, and other people like to use something that has a little bit of flavor to it.
Hmm. Okay, so you start with this 190 proof grain neutral spirit. Do you proof it down before you get it in the still?
Yeah, so I use these blue buckets, these blue bins, and I divvy up that tank into those blue drums at a specific weight, and then that goes into the still, and then I weigh out a specific amount of water as well, and it's the same every time. Like, it's the same process. So I'm always putting in the exact same amount of alcohol and the exact same amount of water, so it always equals 100 gallons of 100 proof. And honestly, that's just we chose that because it's just easy for math, going from 100 proof, and then 100 gallons is really easy to do math from as well. So we always it's just it just makes it easier for us. Other distilleries might choose a lower proof. Some distilleries might choose a higher proof. But for us, 100 gallons of 100 proof was a sweet spot. And so we've been doing it it's been like 10 years now. The brand has been around since 2011, so it's been 12, 13 years. But it's just been the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, it's like clockwork now. And that's just consistency. That's how we keep making a great product over and over and over again.
Okay, I have one more question about basic production methods before we move on to tasting notes, or I'll ask again. If chat has any questions for Alex about basic gin production, now's the time. So I'll let you get those in the chat. And Phil, now's the time to start thinking if you have any questions. So one more question before we move on. I noticed that you have bricks lined up around the bottoms of your stills. And that reminded me, if I'm not mistaken, your stills are actually direct fired. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
direct fire is kind of a rare choice even in whiskey these days. Why is a gin distiller using direct fire stills?
We decided to use direct fire because there was two founders to the brand, and there was a husband and wife, and the wife was the marketing, and the husband was the distiller, and the husband, Ben Capdeville, he was trained by his grandfather, and it was kind of like a hobby that they had, and it was passed down through generations. So his grandfather taught his father, and his father taught him. But this is like kind of like your basic distilling setup. You use a direct fire underneath, and to heat up the liquid inside. And the bricks around the still are used for keeping that heat in. It's like insulation. It takes about 2 hours to heat up the still with the bricks around it. I mean, it takes 2 hours with the bricks around it, and we're not losing any of that energy from the burners. But it is very rare to find a distillery these days that uses direct fire, and I think it's because also we use small stills, which makes it a little bit more safe, makes it a little bit more obtainable in the fact that we can do it. If we were using steam, I would probably opt for like a bigger still, and kind of change it up a little bit. But again, that's part of the recipe is using that direct fire, using the same methods over and over again. So as of right now, I'm not too sure if there is another distillery in Seattle that uses direct fire. Anything that comes after us has been using steam for the majority of it, and that's the most popular one. But then you also need a boiler, so you need a boiler room, and our distillery is super small. I mean, that's the tasting room there, and then you kind of come around to all the storage, and then my office is over in that area, and then the stills. And so it's a very, very small production space. So putting in a boiler room would be probably a big endeavor. Um, but other than that, yeah, it's a kind of a novelty thing too. I mean, I like it. People that come in, they get a big kick out of it, and it's something again that's super special to us.
On the note of, so you've just spawned another question. So on the note of energy efficiency, you're doing something a little bit interesting with the cooling and heating of your stills. Uh, there's a tote outside with water full of it, I believe.
That's correct.
So could you go a bit into the design of your sort of passive cooling system?
Yeah, we kind of, I mean, we like doing things green, and we don't like wasting a lot of material or it's a big waste when you're distilling botanicals and you're just throwing those botanicals away afterwards. So I'm always looking at ways in order to not waste water, not waste botanicals, not like a lot of waste. So what we decided to do was to make an enclosed cooling system, and I have a 550-gallon tank outside that is cooled by the ambient temperature outside, and so it's enclosed. So as the morning, it's super cold, and then the water rises in temperature over the course of the day. But for us, it's just something that we do for the environment, and it might cost me a couple extra hours, but I am also, not creating a lot of waste with just running water from a faucet through our cooling system and then down a drain. So that's something that we kind of always look forward to is just not wasting a lot of material.
And I guess one more note on the sort of setup that you've got there. You've got this is probably a fairly common thing, but I honestly haven't been to that many distilleries and talked in that much detail about what all the pipes do. So you showed me once that you've got these sort of pressure relief valves that empty to the outside as sort of a safety mechanism in case you have vapors overflow. Because you have direct fire,
Yes.
it would be very dangerous if you had a alcohol leak inside
Yes.
of the distilling room.
No, very much so. The safety here is a little bit higher than a lot of other places because we use direct fire. We can't have any we have to have everything explosion proof. Our fans can't have a spark in it or anything like that. Just because of the fact that if there is a leak somewhere, vapors, uh, it's clear and you can kind of smell it, but other than that, it's you're always got to keep your eye out for leaks and stuff like that. But if there was any clogs in the distillations system, then if there was any buildup of any pressure beyond like 5 psi, which is not very much at all, it triggers a release valve and pushes all the vapor out of the building outside in order to not spark from using the direct fire. So a lot of safety mechanisms on the stills as much as you possibly can. We have anti crush. So if there was a buildup in there too, there's the possibility of them crushing. So we have a one that allows a little bit of air into it as well. We have overflow measures. So if there was distillate spirit that was already condensing and then there was a clog in that area and then it just started to overflow, it could reach that can also reach the flames. So basically rule number one is in the distillery is don't start a fire. So we do everything we possibly can in order to be safe and prevent that from happening. So yeah, there's a couple release valves which every still should have. Every distillery should have, even if it's steam. If because if you're running with steam, then you don't worry about explosion proof fans too much, even though it is a necessity to have at every distillery. Some places just don't do it. So you're always on high alert. You're always keeping your eye out for vapor. You're always keeping your eye out for spills. Distilleries could be run by machines, but it takes, the human is there to make sure that nothing goes wrong for the most part and to react when that does. So it's that's pretty much a majority of my job is just checking things out, being here over the course of the day, making measurements and making sure that nothing bad happens.
I remembered one more question, and I see a question in chat. I will get to that, Rich. Thanks very much. So you mentioned earlier, and I sort of my brain went, yeah, okay, because it sort of seemed common sense for distilling. But you mentioned earlier that you discard your heads and your tails, which is interesting considering that you start with a distilled spirit to begin with. And you mentioned that there was poison in the heads. Why is that?
There's a little bit in there, not as much as like a whiskey distillation, but there's always a little bit in there. And honestly, our heads, it's mostly for flavor. We use orange peel, and it's a heavier oil, so it's the first oil that usually comes off on the distillation. So we collect a lot of that, and we discard that, and so that the gin is more balanced in the long run with flavor. But honestly, we can use the heads for mostly cleaning. We collect those and then we use it for cleaning distilling parts. We use it for cleaning the distillery in general. It smells like oranges. So it's like a natural like disinfectant, and that's what we use it for the majority of. But like in your from fermentation distilling, you're gonna find there's a lot of acetones in heads, and a lot of that is bad. That's why, when people are like, oh, they went blind from drinking moonshine, it's because they didn't discard their heads. And so we do that as a safety measure, and also it's part of the recipe. We don't want it to be too orange heavy, so we discard that first little bit of it, and after that, the juniper and the baking spices come in more, and it's a more well balanced product after that.
Makes sense to me. So less about the poison, more about the flavor profile.
Yeah, yeah. There's just a tiny bit. It won't kill anybody. Um, it won't make you go blind. It's just more
Doesn't
of,
hurt to help avoid a hangover,
yeah,
though.
yes, no, totally, exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, and you start talking about it, and people are like, they get a little weird about that kind of stuff. So it's always like, no, no, we discard that, and it's part of it is because of that. Most of it's for the flavor profile. But yeah, it's like, again, it's great for me because I get to like collect basically free cleaning products and clean the whole
Hmm.
the distillery with it. So it's it always smells like oranges in here, which is really really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you're making your own orange cleaning product.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So Bartlome said OMG LOL at some point, and I wasn't sure what that was in reaction to. Uh, I tried asking in chat, but she might only be listening. So if you would like to clarify what that was about, if we said something bad or something
I
like
don't know.
that, um, jump in chat, Bartlome, and let us know. And also, Rich said the cask for the whiskey, but I don't know what that was in response to. If you could clarify. Um, and then, okay, so here's the question: do you have any experiments going?
I always have experiments going. I'm always tooling with some different botanicals, or just I love fermenting stuff. It doesn't have to be just spirits or alcohol. It's like sometimes it's kombucha, sometimes it's something else. But as of right now, all of my experiments are kind of on hold. A lot of them are, in my head, with stuff that I want to do in the future, and probably once I start really getting heavily into getting big gin distilled this year, I'll probably do some other stuff on the side. I have like an R&D still, a small still, and every once in a while, I get an itch to like try something out. What's this like as if you distilled it as a gin. Because it's a little bit different when you're like taking pineapple juice and distilling it, or if you're taking pineapple chunks and throwing it into a still with already distilled vodka and distilling it. It comes out a little bit different. So I'm always testing. I'm always seeing what's good and what's bad, what works, what doesn't work. I'm really I have I have an affinity towards rum, so I'm always like kind of like fermenting sugar and making small runs of rum, stuff like that. But that's just to get my own itch. Can't stop fermenting. If you what is it? If you stop doing it, you lose it. So I'm always like keeping up on like, let's like distill something, or let's like ferment something. Let's see what this is like, and see if I still got that, that talent of making yeast eat the sugar and come out as alcohol. And it's interesting to do fermentations in this place. It's a warehouse. There's no central heating. The tasting room is heated, and my office is heated. So I'll have like some weird jars in my office because the heat's up. During summer, especially, I'll be distilling bigger batches of stuff because it gets 72 degrees in here, which is perfect for distilling or for fermenting. So those are kind of the big times when summer rolls around. I'm usually fooling around with something, but right now it's so cold here that it's kind of hard to kind of get any fermentations going on a natural scale or a natural way. We I do have the heating pads and stuff like that, but it never really turns out that well. So I tend to wait for the summer to do a lot of my experimentations, and you know, as much as I can.
So, because you said that you've experimented with making, experimental batches of rum, have you thought about using your little experimental still to make a gin with some of your rum as a base, just to see what would happen?
I have thought about the idea. Um, I have toyed very heavily with the idea of making a gin that's tropical. And so that is definitely an idea and something that I'll probably try out in the future. I like very heavy flavored rums. So it's kind of I don't know how the two will go together, but I do enjoy distilling rum and then putting it in a barrel and then barrel aging it, and then after that I'll put some gin in it. So those are kind of the ideas that I have for something along those lines of distilling something that's a little bit more tropical in botanicals, and then using the barrel that had a really like kind of a funky um, rum in it in order to age that gin. So that's might be something that you might see in the future. With experimental wise, but other than that, yeah, I'm always it's always in the back of my head. um the rum is very like pineapple heavy, a lot of passion fruit flavors, a lot of like ripe fruits. So just experimenting and leaning more into that is definitely something that I'm thinking about. And maybe in the future you will see that, because that makes sense. Um, Makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of distilleries that use just sugar cane, and they distill it and they make a neutral, flavorless spirit out of it to make gin. But there's other distilleries that use that base spirit to add a little bit of flavor. So now it's now you gotta for me it's like, well, we've done the London Dry and we do it very well, and basically it kind of runs itself. So now it's to look for something a little bit different, and sometimes you need a drastic change, and going somewhere completely different would be using something like a sugar-based spirit that has some flavor to it to make gin. And what do you call that? Do you call that an Old Tom gin, or do you call that a London Dry gin? Because you're using something that has a bit of sweetness to it. Might as well kind of start experimenting with different um, categories of gin. So when I start to think about the fact that we should probably be doing like an Old Tom gin, that will definitely be something that comes up in the production notes. Being like, should I start with a rum, or should I start with a funky spirit, or should I start with something that's more neutral, that has almost no flavor at all?
On the note of rum, because I brought it up. Uh, the pawn has just put blackberry rum in the chat, which I believe is a reference to our last guest was Brendan Carty of Killoan Distillery. And they make a really interesting rum using wild yeast and blackberries.
Yeah, sounds delicious.
It is.
Um, there are um, so on summer days when it's nice and hot here and in season, I can walk probably like 15 minutes and pick fresh blackberries. So I think once we start developing new recipes. There is talks of maybe doing a Northwest gin, and that is there's a decent list of botanicals to use, but blackberries is on there. So there in the future, like if we decide to do maybe something like a Northwest gin, we'll be doing something that's got blackberries in it, most likely. I'm very much toying around with that idea. Um, but I don't really want to steal ideas from other distilleries, and but that's a great idea using the wild yeast and the blackberries and flavored rums and flavored spirits. It's always something to consider, when, especially as a person that works at a distillery. I'm always again looking for new things, new recipes, new flavors. So it's yeah, it seems like a no brainer.
So, sort of because my ADHD has me bouncing from topic to topic. You mentioned doing a Northwest centric gin recipe that captures the sort of local uh, flora of the Northwest.
Yeah.
Where what is your plan to start on that? Are you going to do something uh, really different and reduce the amount of juniper and have perhaps other similar botanicals sort of working with the juniper, or are you going to make it in sort of the London Dry style but with the local botanicals?
I'm thinking that it probably would be something that is similar to a London Dry style. Um, but with that said, it's going to be probably something with like you can really tone down the juniper in Big Gin. Big Gin is very much like a juniper heavy London Dry gin, and then once we step away from that, there is a huge headroom in the amount of juniper that we use. And we could dial that back and introduce different botanicals from the Pacific Northwest. There is a large list of botanicals that you can use, and I'm starting to put together the list. I'm starting to source, and I'm starting to think about what I want to use. Um, it's I like to use the unconventional. I like to kind of put something in there that's going to really make it kind of stand out a little bit. So we live in an area that has it has the city, it has the mountains, and it has the ocean. And so what can I use from some of these places that that really kind of goes together and is very harmonious in the gin. Using things like rosemary and blackberries, and then using things like oyster shells or crab shells from the ocean, and giving it, that fisherman's gin or that forest gin. There's tons of stuff in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of people aren't using for the most part, but some of them are catching on. So I've got to act quickly. I've got to kind of come up with something unique, something that stands out, stands alone. But it's something that is already getting thought about. It's already got a list, source some of the stuff. Now I think at this point it's distilling different amounts of these ingredients and figuring out how well balanced I can make it. And then after that, it's whenever the company wants to go forward and start producing other gins, then I have a good, like, couple of them in my back pocket that we could just pull out and start production pretty quickly, and kind of capture the market as fast as possible.
And speaking of unusual or unconventional, um, I like your variety of um, barrels that you use for resting the gin. For example, I've never encountered a gin rested in an apple brandy barrel, and it is. I poured myself a little bit of it, and I find it to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's to me, before I started as a distiller, gin and apple brandy was always something that I kind of a go-to to make cocktails. It makes a great gin and tonic with a little bit of apple brandy. Uh, Different cocktails, swapping out ingredients. A Vesper with apple brandy, so gin, apple brandy, and Lillet. Um, just just using sparkling apple juice like Mortonelli instead of champagne in a cocktail brings a whole new level. So when I started the barrel aging program, I really took hints from making cocktails and combining flavors, and one of them definitely was apples and gin and apples and juniper. And to me, it works out really well. They combine very easily, and yeah, it creates obviously a different experience for the consumer.
So yeah, I guess we've sort of done the segue into barrel aged brandy now, and I think that now is probably a good time to start getting into sorts of tasting notes or impressions or something along those lines, kind of whatever makes sense. But before we do, let me just give Alex a list of what we actually have in front of us. So Phil and I are fortunate once again to have the full set of the same things to taste. So we of course have the original unaged Big Gin, which happens to be the vintage Captive Spirits label version. But as you said,
Yeah,
there should be very little difference.
it's vintage.
And I think I made the joke when you gave it to me that I was like, "What, vintage 2019?"
Yeah, pretty much.
Because it was still fairly recent, I believe.
Yeah.
I think going from oldest to newest in terms of releases, I'm looking at the caps to look at the Captive Spirits sigil. I believe the oldest the oldest release I have is the Peat Barreled Big Gin, which is marked PB/ARD/LAPH,
Okay.
which I take to mean some kind of peat barrel and Ardbeg and Lefroy.
Yeah, that's a blend of the PB is peated barrels from Westland, and then the Ardbeg and the Lefroy barrels. So I tend to fill a decent amount of barrels for the peated gin, and then go through and blend them together. The peat flavor in those barrels are so strong too that I'm able to refill the barrels a couple times. So it's that one's really fun because I get to go through and um, taste and spit and go through and kind of put together a blend. And so that one's just kind of like a fun thing to do. The bourbon barrel is pretty straightforward, but yeah, so you'll get different blends with the peat barrel. So you'll see different numbers. You'll see different. So like at this point now, I think we've kind of faded out the Westland barrels, and we're now just doing Ardbeg and Lefroy barrels. And most of the gin sits in a barrel for at least a year before we blend it together and release it. So it's that product is kind of always like changing and from batch to batch, which is kind of nice to kind of get a little bit of an inconsistency to it, because then the consumer can try different ones, decide, like I really like this one, buy a couple bottles, keep it, see the difference in the different blends. Because honestly, that one of those barrels in that batch is probably a second fill in the next batch. And so it's just a little bit different, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's also my favorite product that we make, because I'm a huge Scotch fan and a huge Smoky Things fan. So yeah, it's that one's a lot of fun.
Maybe we bury the lead a little bit on Alex is a Scotch fan and a peat fan. So yeah,
You'll
I think
notice
that
like,
there's a
lot.
trend with these barreled gins. Yeah.
There is a lot of them.
I
Like, Scotch
I
finished this.
intentionally
Just
started with the
finishing
apple.
Scotch barrels.
Yeah. No, actually, that's a really good point. So, I meant to sort of just list what we have. Then we kind of got sidetracked talking about one of them. So, right, we have the original. We have the Peat Barreled. We have the McCarthy's single barrel, which all being under HRD, that's something that you have access to, which is very cool.
Yep.
And as you can see, I love it and I love to share it. Actually, as a matter of fact, this is the one that Alex brought to my house. We had a McCarthy's night, and Alex brought McCarthy's Big Gin. So
It was
that
appropriate.
was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was definitely appropriate. And then the last one, or maybe not the last one. So there's also a one aged 2 years in an American single malt barrel, then finished 1.5 years in a PX sherry cask, which recently got a very favorable review from ginraiders.com. And I can see why. And then there was the Big Gin aged in a Clear Creek apple brandy barrel for 4 years, which was, I believe, the most recent of the releases that I have. And this was bottled exclusively for Bob's Liquor, which regrettably went out of business before this was completely sold out. And Alex actually got this barrel back at the distillery. I would venture to guess it's sold out by now because that was probably around a year ago that I bought mine.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one is very cool. Everything Clear Creek apple brandy seems to be turning up aces lately. So that, I believe, if I named five, those are the five things that we have to sample. And I think Phil has the right idea that we probably should start with the apple brandy for
Yeah.
doing any kind of sensory analysis to avoid the peat.
Yeah, I would do the peat last. I always tend to go obviously London Dry, then bourbon or apple brandy, and then
We've got this ASM and PX that probably makes sense to go next.
yeah, that one's it's a pretty big bold flavor though still, but yeah, no, you got the right idea.
Okay, so Phil, any impressions on just the plain Big Gin before we move on to the barrel aged ones?
Oh, it is wonderfly spicy. Sort of my favorite gins. Not really being much of a gin person, to be honest. Mainly gleaned off of. I have a friend who was sort of into gin the way I'm into whiskey. Um, sort of all of my favorite gins are have some spice. For example, the Catoctin Creek Watershed gin, which is a rye new make base and is got some of that rye spice in it, as well as their, you know, dry gin botanicals, and this is sort of all of that spice without the sort of breadiness. So it's got like sort of all the top notes that I like in a nice hot spicy gin. I'm not explaining it well, but it's it's the sort of jumps out at you and pokes you and goes, gotcha.
Yeah, I prefer the tingliness, spicy, baking spices kind of flavor profile. And yeah, it's I mean, I want to say 3 to 4 out of the 9 ingredients are some form of pepper or peppercorn or some kind of like baking spice. So we do lean very heavily into that. Um, and I enjoy that myself too because I'm not a huge floral fan. And so it's yeah, it kind of jumps out a little bit, and it's very nice. A little bit of tingle on the palate, which is always good. But yeah, no, you explained it pretty well.
All right, what do you think,
All
Mike?
right, yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think what's kind of interesting is that I have found this sort of strange pattern with Big Gin where it really appeals to me in like the early evening. And I think something about those strong, spicy, sharp, like those pop notes make it a little too intense for like a nightcap. Like if I'm making a cocktail around like 9, 10 p.m., And like I typically go to bed late, like midnight, 1 a.m. So like that's not the last thing I'm doing. I'm not like literally taking that to bed, but like that sort of after dinner, late evening drink. Um, the plain big gin is a little bit intense for me.
Yeah, it's
Which
pretty.
sorry, I don't mean to get into like criticism. I don't mean that to be a criticism. It's just like that sort of that direction of the flavors is like um it is noticeably intense,
Yeah, it's
which
more
is a
like
good thing
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, it's more like an aperitif, kind of
Yes.
like almost like
Yeah.
the palate gets your gets your mouth watering a little bit from the spiciness. Uh, but yeah, it's a little sharp, but living in a like being something that's like a robust flavored gin too is like I could definitely see that being like drinking it straight too. It could be a little intense, but also I always loved a good kick in the mouth with flavor. So um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't own any like Campari Amaro type stuff except for the Wilderton bittersweet aperitif. Yep, there we go.
yeah,
Um, since they're also in Hood River, normally I try not to like advertise other products while I have a guest on, but since they're also in Hood River and Bartlett set us up with them, I figured that would be okay. So besides that, I don't really have any of those really bitter type things, but the Big Gin makes me want a Negroni.
yes,
Like I just think it would handle that bitterness and it would stand up really well in that cocktail.
yeah, and those are like uh, mostly uh, appetite stimulating drinks. It's something that you would
Yep.
have early in the day or early before dinner.
Yep.
So that makes total sense.
Makes sense. It's a gin and tonic day drinker, keep the malaria away kind of drink.
Oh, definitely.
um, okay, so moving on from the now this tasting order makes sense, but I almost feel it's unfair to go straight to the 4-year apple brandy cask right after that because that is so tremendously good. I've like I think it may be uh the best gin I've ever encountered.
It's yeah, it was like one of the earlier ideas too. It was like we just partnered up with Clear Creek and Hood River Distillers, and um, it would just to like I think me and Ben was still working here as well, and it was one of those things where like we just kind of like both looked at each other and was like, we need apple brandy barrel. Um, we honestly like, I mean, 4 years is a very not a long time, but it's a very good amount of time to be leaving it in a barrel. And it came out smooth, and we pulled it at the right time, and it definitely is like I mean it's super delicious, and it just married very well. Just that apple brandy, it's like that right amount of malic acid and a little bit of medicinal, and it makes for a brighter gin. And so yeah, it goes it's a great sipper. um, I don't know if like we should be making too many cocktails out of it, but just a little bit of ice and like a lemon twist would be perfect for sipping on that gin.
Yep, and it is 103.2 proof, so this is barrel strength
Yeah,
as
so
opposed to the 47% of the standard.
yeah, we fill all of our barrels at 100 proof, and because of the climate here, I tend to have water evaporating instead of alcohol. So the temperature or the proofs rise a little bit, but other than that, it makes for it makes for a little bit of a stronger gin, but less water and more flavor. So it kind of bumps up the botanical flavor a little bit, which is really nice, and yeah, it creates a nice sipper. That's why it's like good to drink on ice. Kind of mellows it out a little bit.
Absolutely.
I do like that something about the apple brandy really makes the orange pop a little bit more in this one, and it sits together really well. But I like that combination.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier. I think barrel aging kind of so our gin I think lends itself very very well to being barrel aged. We don't use a lot of floral ingredients, so we use a lot of spicy ingredients. So it blends really well with the wood, and it kind of the wood kind of marries really well with the juniper, so that kind of like doesn't necessarily come out as a distinctive flavor. So then it gives lead way for orange and all the baking spices to come out. And so a lot of our barrel aged gins have a little bit more of that orange citrus note to them.
Yep, and that apple plus the baking spices just makes sense.
Yep.
I feel like somehow I didn't realize before now that's what's going on here. That I mean, like for me, like the reason that it gels so well on my palate and drinks like a whiskey, aside from the sort of juniper and botanical notes, like there's extra stuff there, but to me this drinks more like a whiskey with a little bit of gin flavor than like uh you know gin with a little bit of barrel flavor. If that makes sense.
It's Ginsky.
Yeah, it's Ginsky. Which brings us. So there was a comment earlier we breezed by a little bit. I'm not sure if Phil read it while I was feeding the dog.
Yes.
Rich was saying that the botanicals flavor the spirit like a cask flavors whiskey.
Yes.
So there's some parallels here.
Yeah.
And we didn't stop at botanicals. We went and added the barrel. So there's, now you have the whiskey or the brandy flavoring the gin as well.
Yeah.
Another comment was the Bartolome likes big gin in a blended Saturn. I'm not familiar with that cocktail.
It's a gin and orgeat, falernum, lemon juice, passion fruit. I think that's it.
That sounds amazing.
It's really really good. But it's one of those things too where like all of those flavors and still you can still taste the gin through it. So it is definitely like a very fun summer tropical drink that you can really like showcase the gin in. And it's got some of my favorite flavors in there too, with the orgeat, which is almond flavor, and the passion fruit.
Yep, orgeat is not for everyone. If you don't like, my wife doesn't like almonds, for example. If you don't like almonds, you may not like orgeat. I personally love it. It especially goes really well with rum. There's like a funkiness that combines with the nuttiness that goes really well.
Oh yeah.
But I come to think of it, I'm not sure if I've ever had a gin and orgeat cocktail, so that feels worth trying.
Yeah, Saturn is like the popular one. Like if you were to see those two ingredients together, they usually like come in a Saturn. A popular rum drink would be a Mai Tai that has both rum and orgeat in it as well, and those are the two. Those are my two go-tos.
All right, I would suggest as our next sip to have the aged 2 years in American single malt and then finished 1.5 years in a PX sherry cask. That feels like the right next step.
Yeah.
Really different on the nose.
Yeah, I mean, just the different barrels creates a whole new experience.
Oh, by the way, before we completely move on from the apple brandy barrel, I gave a bottle of that as a gift to a friend who's a fan of Big Gin, and she absolutely loved it.
Oh, great!
So it's not only for whiskey nerds.
No, it's for everyone. I honestly like as a gin producer, I've gotten so many like, oh, I can't drink gin. Oh, I don't like gin. Oh, it tastes like pine sol or cleaning products. And so to me, I'm like, how do I get all these people into drinking this? And so just stealing all these production methods from whiskey distillers and Scotch distillers, and using these. It's like I mean, I call it a gateway drug. Getting whiskey drinkers into gin, getting gin drinkers into whiskey. Just expanding everyone's palate and what they can and can't drink. So yeah. So, I get a lot of people being like, well, I don't even like gin. And then I'm like, well, I have one for you. that you can try. And it's usually one of the barrel aged ones. And then they're like, "Oh, this is closer to whiskey." And I'm like, "Yeah, yep." And so then they're like, "Well, I can drink this." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's great." And then, this is what's for.
Yeah, this one I might have to try in an old fashioned. This So am I detecting so okay, here's my flavor profile I guess that I'm getting. So obviously the sort of backbone of gin, but the gin is not dominant. It's got some fruitiness. It's got a chocolatey note on the nose. The nose is incredible. It's like
Yeah.
chocolate, leather, and dried fruit.
Yep. No, totally. Like that's how I kind of describe it as well. It's yeah, dark fruit, dark leather. Um, it's got to me, it's got that nice like sherry nuttiness, and like it's got just a broodingness. It's like it's like maybe you were like, oh, like I don't drink the London Dry at night, but after dinner and before I go to bed, this is like might something you'd be more interested in drinking. Um, and then a little bit of sugar and some bitters. Yeah, totally. Don't get too complicated.
Yeah, this is a powerhouse right here.
Yeah.
It's got a lot, and it's all of it at once. It's gin,
Yep.
it's the sherry, it's the American single malt. I think the American single malt is what's bringing the chocolatiness, and I hope I'm not mistaken. I don't think I'm imagining it. There's just the barest hint of smoke. Was this also a peated Westland cask?
It was.
Okay.
Yes. It was like the last couple that I had that were sitting for 2 years. And honestly, this, besides like, so I know that the apple brandy one was 4 years, but once the founder, Ben, left, this was the first idea that I had to do some different barrel age expressions, was to take some of the peated gin and put it in a sherry barrel, because I like Scotch aged in sherry barrels so much. I was like, this is just a no brainer. I have to do this. And so yeah, it was the first purchase I made with experimental barrels, was the PX sherry barrels. And then from there it was just a matter of filling them and tasting them, and then pulling it at the right time. And it's so this is like I'm very, very proud of it, because it is like kind of the first thing that like as like the first thing I did as a standalone, me like taking over the distillery and making the decisions. This was the first one, so to get a good review on it was like very validating.
Yeah, Rich, PX is a great sherry, especially for peated Scotch.
Yeah,
Completely agree. One of my favorite styles is heavily peated single malt and PX.
yeah.
And that sort of leads into my question about this PX barrel. Did you get these PX barrels from the same place as McCarthy's PX finish?
I don't know. I could say that I got them from Rocky Mountain Barrel Company,
Okay.
but they do they do a non they won't tell you where they come from. So it's
Okay.
like I was hoping that I would get these barrels and they would be jet black, because they would be from Lestau, because I was like, that's super metal and I really want that. But they were like really nice barrels that came from somewhere in Spain. They had a little bit of sherry left in them, and it looked like they looked like they were very well maintained. So it was just a pleasure working with them. And I love Rocky Mountain Barrel Company. They'll send me like a fresh sheet of barrels that they have, and like I can go through and choose barrels. Some of them they will tell you where they come from. Some of them they won't. But for the most part, they always have like really quality products and like really quality barrels. So I never like got anything that was like, oh no, I'm not going to use this. It was all very much, I was like, this is going to be amazing.
Did you take the sherry out of the barrel? Did you sort of try to dry the barrel first, or did you leave it in, slosh it
I
around a
took
little?
I took the sherry out of the barrel, and then I didn't dry it or anything like that. I just kind of like dumped it out. And I think the same day I filled them with the gin. So they were still like kind of wet on the inside with sherry.
That's the best.
Yeah, yeah. So it's got it's a little bit more of like a softer, and it's got a little bit more of that sherry flavor in there. And I love sherry. I like I like everything like not heavily alcohol. So like fortified wines, sherry, um, you know, Campari, stuff like that was like always kind of my jam. So just to be able to use it in the process was a lot of fun, um, because I already know it pretty well. I was like, I already knew the flavor. These, I was like, this is gonna be really good because I already know what it's kind of gonna be like from drinking scotch that are aged in sherry barrels, making cocktails with gin and sherry in them, as a bartender. So it was again, to me, it was like a no brainer. I just needed to um, choose the right sherry and choose the right time frame that they were in the barrel.
Yeah, nice. So I imagine that that finishing time of a year and a half was driven by testing it every so often and not something premeditated or not like we need to release this now kind of thing.
No, honestly, that's the second fill of that barrel too. I filled the
Oh,
first fill was only like a month. It was only like 4 weeks, I think. And I pulled it right away because the sherry was like really dominant in there. And then after that, I immediately like refilled those barrels, and then let that sit for about a year and a half. And then I bought more sherry, and I actually have sherry sitting in one of the barrels right now, kind of rehydrating the barrel. And then once I'm done kind of rehydrating the barrel, I'll put more gin in it, and kind of see how long I can keep it going. It's kind of an experiment, seeing what we can do, what we can't do. Most
is
of the
that
time,
did you kind of fill it up or do you like roll it around regularly to like
I do roll it around every once in a while. It's like a little bit of a workout that I have at the gym, my little CrossFit. So rolling around this big giant, because the sherry barrels are much bigger than bourbon barrels. They can be up to 60 gallons, where the bourbon barrels are always 52 to 53 gallons. So it's a little bit of a heavier barrel.
all right. Might I suggest that our next sip is the McCarthy's single barrel?
This is the one that I've been looking forward to the most.
Maybe we should save it for last. I don't know, but my recollection is that the peat barrel
I don't know.
is a little more overpowering.
A little bit.
But we'll
The
see.
McCarthy's though is, I mean, when you were talking like, oh, there's like well, I guess, I mean, you should try it first, but there's, to me, like, McCarthy's was, when I was drinking, was something that I found very early on in my bartending career, and was like randomly on a bar shelf somewhere, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, what is this? American single malt? That's crazy. And I fell in love with it because of the chocolatiness and smokiness it has. And so it really comes across in the gin as well. I it almost has like a little hint of like mole in there that I'm a really big fan of, with like a little bit of like a peppery spicy, or not like a jalapeno peppery spicy, but like a pepperiness to it, and then a chocolatiness to it.
That nice, rich, dark chocolate
Hmm. Yeah,
combined
like
with
That
baking
like,
chocolate, not milk chocolate.
yeah.
yeah, that's right on with the mole. I love good chicken mole. I
I
guess
think
what do
everyone
you call
does.
it? Abuela or something, or
I'm like,
adobe? Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I should know because I'm from Texas and I just had like the last day I was in Houston, I had a really good mole.
Oh, nice. It's hard to find up here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm still searching around for it, but I'm from Arizona
I'm
too, so
okay.
I
I'm
mean,
probably totally imagining this, but I'm getting a little cilantro on the nose too.
that's persuasion.
Hmm. That's the power of suggestion for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Think tacos.
And no one's hungry again.
Rich suggests with your sherry barrels, you should try a Solaris system.
It's something that I've been thinking about. I only have like maybe one or two barrels, so it's kind of if I got more barrels, if I had like 3 to 5 barrels, it would definitely be like more of like, oh, I should just do a Solaris system. And I do, and we do sell single barrels, so I'm more likely to like dump the barrel, bottle the barrel, sell the barrel, fill the barrel, dump the barrel, bottle the barrel. But in the future, as we move forward, I'm always looking for new techniques to like use in our barrel aging process, and to make different products out of. Because like we just distill big gin and then we barrel age these gins and they come out great as different products with different flavor profiles just from the barrels that they've been in and the different spirits that were in there before. So I mean, it's definitely crossed my mind for sure.
I just realized I should probably actually show these bottles on stream. So
They
real
all
quick,
kind of
I'll
have
run
the
through the
same label.
bottles. Yeah, they they kind of have the same label, but some of them are different because of
Yeah,
the changeover from
yeah, the
Big Gin to
changeover.
Captive
Yeah,
Spirits.
yeah.
So let's see. So here is the Captive Spirits version of the standard Big Gin, where you can see the London Dry on top and the Captive Spirits sigil in the middle, and no particular embossing or foil to really speak of. There's a little bit around the sigil on the side. You probably can just barely see there. Yeah, it's a little shiny. Uh, I wonder if when I actually do the solo layout, do I mute everybody else? I actually am not 100% sure about that.
I don't believe so, because I believe we're still technically on the stage because we're not
Yep,
right out on the
I
bottom.
still hear you talking, so I'm taking that as a good sign. So the apple brandy that we started with, the label looks like that. So this was a Big Gin branded with the Big Gin sigil after the rebranding, and it's got that sort of maroon foil wrap on the sides. And you can see this was bottled exclusively for Bob's Liquor and was aged for 4 years in the apple brandy cask.
That one is my favorite looking of the lot that I've encountered personally.
Yeah, that label is beautiful.
So this is a very similar label. I want to say I think the wrap is the same maroon kind of color as well. The 2 years in American single malt and a year and a half in a PX sherry cask. So this one again is the Big Gin branded, and this one is bottled exclusively for Total Wine. Theoretically, that means it's more available.
Yeah, you'll find that the same label is going to be on a lot of the private barrel select. We went with that as the barrel aged gins, or the single barrels, and then we add that little sticker on the bottom.
Gotcha. Yeah. So these both say private barrel select. Orient those correctly. You can see. Cool. And then the last one, which is just such a perfect color for, this is the old Captive Spirits branding again, but the perfect color for a peat cask is this sort of Ardbeg greenish yellow, sort of swampy color. And this says Peat Barreled on the top. So this is, I guess as I understand it, this is not a private barrel in any way. This is a regular series.
It is, yeah.
As you were describing.
Yeah, the Peat Barrel, the Bourbon Barrel, and the London Dry are all like our 3 main products, and then the Private Barrel Select is more of our like experimental variety of barrel finishes, something that we either like sell as a single barrel to like restaurants and liquor stores. We also sell when we have the tasting room open. We also sell it in the tasting room as well. But that's like kind of our 4 label colors. But yeah, so that'll continue as well. We just changed the little sticker on the bottom for the Private Barrel Select.
Nice. So Rich just did some homework for us and found out that on the online purchase, only the standard Big Gin is available. That definitely makes sense. Out of these, 2 of them are single barrel private selects. The Bob's Liquors was previously only available at Bob's Liquor until they closed, and then it was available at Big Gin. The maybe all of these barrels you have a couple of cases held back at the distillery for people to buy. For anyone who happens to visit, the single malt then finished in PX is a total wine bottling. So if you were going to find that, that would be potentially in a total wine.
It would
So
be.
you might go on the total wine search and search that up.
Yeah, and
Because you might find one near you, but there's probably only a barrel worth of these. So
yeah, I was gonna mention that if you live in the greater Seattle area, and the one in Inner Bay is the one that has the it has the PX sherry barrel finished peated gin. That is a majority of it. It also has a 2-year bourbon barrel finish as well at Total Wine, but that the PX one is the one to get. But yeah, you'll find it definitely there, and then a couple other ones in the area. It's very much of a Seattle centric thing. So if anybody's listening,
okay, so we've got one more to sort of taste through here, which is the Peat Barreled. I just showed that bottle. That was this one. Funny enough, even though that you might say that sort of greenish yellow is an ugly color, but it caught my eye. And I think it caught my eye because of that lovely pale yellow color, and that greenish label immediately made me think of Ardbeg.
yeah,
And as a Scotch nerd, I was like, yes, please. And then when I looked at it, I was like, oh, there's Ardbeg and Lafroig casks in this very clearly. And then the PB was a bit of a secret, but you sort of revealed as the peated Westland barrels, which is also very cool. And you didn't need to include that detail to sell me on it. I wanted this bottle. So,
it's my favorite product as well. It's got everything I want in it. It's like smoky, a little salty. Um, the botanicals are there. Um, I I always loved dirty martinis. It makes an amazing dirty martini. I love oysters. It pairs really really well with oysters. It's like a culinary gin too. Like it pairs it with food very well. Bartenders love it for the not your conventional gin cocktails. Yeah, and it goes great with especially like Fever Tree tonic because it's lemongrass heavy. The tonic is lemongrass heavy, so the peat and the lemongrass and the botanicals go really well together. Yeah, I mean, it's my desert island bottle. If I ever, start drinking again, get stuck on a island, that's the bottle that I would like to be on the island. But yeah, it was, yeah, it's a special. It's the one I get to like, design the flavor profile by choosing the barrels that I dump. It's a lot more hands-on product. And
that's great. Yeah, there's
it just
definitely some artistry at show here. And you're totally right on. This would be great in a dirty martini with an olive. Which is like sort of my martini spec tends to be either a vodka martini with a twist of lemon. I don't like a dirty vodka martini with olive.
yeah.
But if I do a gin martini, I sort of 50-50 on whether it's olives or lemon peel. And this one for sure is an olive martini.
Oh,
Most
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah. We do. We usually have one at the distillery too that we like kind of put a couple drops of olive oil on top of it too, which creates a really crazy mouthfeel and complements the pepperiness and the smoke. And it's again like it's very culinary, so it lends towards like a little bit of a food thing. But yeah, it's super super good.
I'm gonna try that. I love olive oil.
Yeah, just a couple of drops on top.
So you were ahead of the trend of the Starbucks olive oil drinks.
Yeah,
You were doing it first.
yeah.
Dirty
No,
martinis with olive oil.
I think they the Starbucks being from Seattle, they stole that from us.
They 100% they stole that
Yeah.
from you. Yeah, because they must have been inspired because they walked into your distillery.
Starbucks, we used to actually give them barrels to like age beans in. Um,
Really?
yeah,
That's
years
cool.
ago.
Huh. So they had gin aged beans?
Kinda, yeah. For a minute, they were doing these they would take the barrels after we were done aging gin in them, and they would put beans in them. And it was just kind of like a trend at the time, I believe. And
Hmm.
um, we've since kind of like moved away from that, but yeah, it
Was
was a
that like
thing.
a Starbucks Reserve project maybe?
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're now acquainted with some coffee people at Boon Boona, and they have expressed an openness to getting connected with a cask from me. So, if that was the sort of thing that you still thought was a good idea, maybe we could point y'all in each other's directions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always like a good collaboration, so we could talk about it.
I have a retired barrel from Alex that so far has just been a furniture piece in my garage. But I was kind of thinking maybe I'll age something in that and then hand that over to Boon Boona.
There you go.
Because it's the size of barrel they want, not being a full 53-gallon barrel, which is too much coffee to put in one barrel. Basically, is
Yeah,
what they said.
that's a
They
lot.
wanted the smaller format one, so it's like a what? It's either a 1 or 2 or 5 gallon barrel. I'm not sure. That you gave me. If
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
2 gallon barrel, I can afford to fill it up. If it's a 5 gallon barrel, I don't think I can afford to fill it up.
No, I think it's like a 5 liter barrel, so it's like a little
Five
older
liter.
one, yeah. Which
Yeah,
is
coffee gin. It gives a different meaning to coffee gin, right? It's not a coffee still, it's coffee beans.
yeah.
It's probably not what Rich was going for, but I'll put that comment up anyway. Coffee gin. Gin
There's a
coffee.
there's a distillery out of Chicago. I think they're out of Chicago. Few. They make a coffee gin.
Oh, few spirits?
Yeah, yeah. They do a coffee gin, I believe.
They do a
Uh,
lot of interesting things.
they do a lot of interesting things. Yeah.
Yeah, do they have it? The answer is yes. That's sort of been my impression
Right?
so far.
You could find something that you're looking for from somewhere.
Yeah, so flavor profile of the peat cask, Phil, what do you think?
It is it is really interesting because there is that like heavy base of like that rich peat smoke with like a little bit of like tarry notes and a little bit of like sort of almost like really dark molasses, and then the nice little bit of citrus spike, and that pepperiness that is sort of a little bit reminiscent of like Talisker pepperiness, but a little bit different with the juniper makes it just a really interesting flavor profile.
Yeah, some of those botanicals. These peat casks play really well with the base big gin
Mm-hmm.
flavors. This one for sure out of all the barreled gins, this one is the most gin-like while also being distinctly peated whiskey influenced.
Yeah. The smoke and the juniper are like kind of they're harmonious. They sit next to each other. They don't really overpower each other. There's like a resininess to it. It's yeah, just like it's like a juniper juniper grows on a plant. It's wood. It should go good with other wood. But no, the smoke and the juniper combine almost perfectly, and they don't overpower each other. They complement each other, and with all the other botanicals that are in there as well, it all lends itself well to being in that, especially the Ardbeg and Lafroig barrels. They're like they're some of the more peaty scotches out there, but when you put a different spirit in there and age it for a certain amount of time, it doesn't come across as like an overly peaty Ardbeg or Lafroig experience. It's got the right amount of peat in there, and it's got the
Mhm.
right balance of botanicals to peat. So it totally works out really well.
Apparently, I really like this one because I've almost finished the quarter ounce that I poured for myself, and I see Phil has too.
Yeah.
Oh,
This one's going down real smooth for sure.
yeah, I always went back for another taste when I was like enjoying it. It was, again, it was my favorite. It's the favorite product that we make on a like on a consistent basis. Like we always have it available. It's definitely my favorite product.
Yep.
I tell people
So
like,
on the basis that you regularly release these and you have more than single barrels worth, Rich observed the standard only is available from HRD.
yeah,
Can we put in some votes for the Peat Barreled gin to also be available online?
I would say everybody that is listening should write into Hood River Distillers and voice their opinion about not being able to purchase it online. And, maybe they'll free up some product and put a little availability on there, and then you'll be able to purchase it online.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Get in the comments. That's how we get things done.
Right. Just start emailing my boss.
Yep. Is your boss the Bartlome or is it someone else?
It is. I'm actually seeing them tomorrow. They're coming up to visit. No, me and Caitlin are very much on the same level. We're peers, and it works out really well. We complement each other, and I go down there sometimes and help out at the Clear Creek Distillery whenever necessary, and I love being part of that whole thing, like the whole Clear Creek and all the products that they come out with. I've also, I've been distilling for almost 10 years now, but I still learn so much from Caitlin because she's been doing it for so long and just has, so much knowledge in it that I can just, any questions that I have, I usually bounce off of her first. So it's been really nice.
All right, I have a question about one more of your barreled products, in a sense, that we don't have in front of us. So when we had Jason Parker from Copperworks on, we talked a bit about the tonic barrel aged big gin, which is a gin product of theirs. I hope you'll forgive me for advertising another brand, but he advertised you, so it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
So what he told us was the tonic barrel gin, Copperworks gin, was aged in a I forget which tonic it was off the top of my head, but the barrel before the makers of the tonic aged their tonic in it, it had been a ex-bourbon big gin cask. Do you remember that cask? What can you tell us about it? How much of this adventure were you aware of?
I honestly, it's funny because it's Bradley's Keena tonic is the product that is aged in big gin barrels. But that's kind of as far as I asked, like where, and then at some point, Bradley, because I know him personally, he's a friend, came to me and was like, I sent this barrel over to Copperworks, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Be nice, a gin aged in a tonic barrel sounds really good, and then I was like, well, I put two and two together, and it was like, that's my barrel, isn't it? He's like, oh yeah. I really love the journey of the barrel. So I was very ecstatic to be like, oh, keep it going. Like, let's keep this barrel going. And my hopes were that, I don't know if Jason had mentioned it, but did he give that barrel back to Bradley to age more tonic in it by any chance?
He didn't tell us,
Okay.
I believe.
Um,
But if that information is available to me, it is on the recording. So I'll go listen back to that. I'll send it to you if I learn anything else.
yeah.
Or if you want to take it upon yourself, it's 2 hours total. I don't remember which half we talked about the tonic barrel, but it was about 10 minutes, I think, of conversation. So if you could scrub through to find it, it wouldn't be that long of a listen. But I could do that for you. I'll send it to you when I find it.
Yeah. I give Bradley barrels on a semi-regular basis, maybe like 1 or 2 a year. And he ages his kenotonic in it. And that's like a fun like a fun collaboration that we have. I also sell the tonic at the tasting room, so you can get like the unaged version and then the aged version that's in our um, in our barrels. Also, whenever I make gin and tonics with that tonic syrup, I'm usually using the barrel aged gin as well, the bourbon barrel aged gin, because it goes so well with it, with all the baking spices and stuff like that. But I'm really just really happy that like it went from us to a place to another like group of friends, and I hope that they're either going to continue using it or pass it along to another group of friends, because that's kind of what it is we're all like between distilleries and breweries and other product manufacturing places. Like, we're all friends, we all know each other, we've all been in the industry, and we all like to kind of, I mean, everything's kind of been done at this point. So pushing for something that's a little bit more of like a handshake or a little bit different and a little bit out of the ordinary, I'm always down for, and I will always like champion that. So that is definitely like something that I'm very proud of. Like, going from us to the tonic manufacturer to another distillery. I hope that goes to somewhere else again that is able to use it. So no, I'm very, it tickles me and makes me very happy that happened.
Awesome. There was yeah. The Bartlemy says, "We aren't peers, we're bros."
We are very much bros. Yeah. We high five a lot and we send each other memes, and we're always chatting back and forth. If I have ideas, I'm always like bouncing them off of her. No, it's, yeah. I have a very good connection with like the distillers at Caitlin and Joe Sullivan. They were like, over the past like 7 years, they've definitely been like people that I've like looked up to, looked towards for inspiration and like knowledge and stuff like that. So it's been, yeah, we're we're bros for sure.
I don't know if Joe is still listening, but he was here earlier.
Good.
He'll probably catch the rest later. I think he was listening to what he could while he cleaned up at the distillery.
Nice.
Okay, so between you and Bartlemy, which one sends more Instagram posts to the other?
Bartlemy does for sure. Right. I'm lacking on my social media interaction. I have I'm just trying to be busy. Trying to cut down on my screen time as much as possible. But yeah, definitely Bartlemy sends way more memes, which are all hysterical. And I if I could like every single one and laugh at every single one, I would be. I think we have a very similar sense of humor too, so it works out really well.
It's good to have that kind of work friendships going on.
It does.
It's good for collaboration.
Yeah.
All right, I have a personal question for you. So you used to have a mustache and a goatee. Where did they go?
I shaved yesterday. It's been 15 years. And I shaved it 2 years ago for like Movember. A couple buddies of mine were like, let's we all had mustaches, goatees, and we're like, let's shave. And I had a panic attack about it. And because I was like, it's taken me like 15 years to grow this in. Like, I don't know if it'll grow back another 15 years. I just didn't know how that worked because it took me so long. I like had it so long and never shaved it. And and then I shaved it and it wasn't too bad. And I shaved recently. I have a. I think it was honestly. I think it was to like scare my girlfriend a lot too, because she hasn't seen me without a mustache and a goatee. So I shaved it. Then I was like, all right, I'm going to go over to her house, and she's like going to like freak out a little bit. But it was partly because of that, and I needed like a drastic change, and um, I was like I was feeling it the last like maybe a couple months. I was like, I really need to shave my mustache and my goatee off. And it just kind of like kept going and kept going and kept going, and I kept getting more gray hairs in there. And I was like, another one popped up, and I was like, you know what, this has got to come off for a minute. So yeah, so I'm checking it out. My face is a lot colder. Um, they working in a distillery that has no central heating and it's always cold in here. I definitely am feeling the like wow, my right around this area, my mouth is like a little bit colder than normal. It's kind of weird, but I'm getting used to it now. It's taken me a good 24 hours to like kind of settle in, but
Mm.
I'm definitely growing it back out. Like it's I'll probably grow it out and shave it more often now, but
Hmm.
as of right now, it's just a it's a new thing. I needed a good like again a drastic change, as everybody does. So, but yeah,
Yep.
no, been getting a lot of like you used to have something and now you don't, and like people are like it is the facial hair. It was such a part of my identity too, like because like people would come up to me or like throughout the city because I've lived here for 20 years and they'd be like, do you work at this place or you look really familiar? And I'd always be like, glasses and a mustache and a goatee. Like it's just a kind of a Seattle hipster thing. So people would be confusing me a lot with other people, and I'd just be like, no, it's definitely like glasses and a mustache. And they're like, you know what, you're right. And so I had to kind of get rid of that for a second. Now I just don't get like people. I can like move through a crowd easier, um,
Yeah.
instead of you know uh, being noticed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think what's interesting about it is that the sort of the focus of your facial accessorizing has moved from the mustache and goatee to the glasses in a way.
yeah,
So with the glasses and the hoodie and clean shaven, you sort of got this spirits professor vibe going on.
yeah. People are like, you look younger. I was like, I don't feel younger, and I don't honestly necessarily don't feel I look younger. Feel like I you can't really tell, but like a lot of it's in my eyes. And so yeah, I kind of have this maybe a little bit more professional look going on. So yeah, I'll take it. That's fine.
Like I
You know,
used
I
to
used to
tell every
shave. Oh, god.
yeah, like I used to tell every coworker and manager who's like, shorter hair and a clean shaven look is more professional, and I'd always go, professionalism is overrated.
It is. It is very much overrated. But it's like I just take other people's opinions. To me, I'm like, it's not this. It's not any different than when I had a mustache and a goatee. I'm also like tattooed, so it's like a little. I'm very much covered up when I'm up here too. So I'm like professionalism. I don't know anything about that.
And if you work in an industry or a place that has more of that sort of, I guess, alt or edgy sort of stylistic tendencies, then going with the big full beard and the long hair like Phil has, or walking in with a Van Dyke and a bunch of tattoos.
Yeah, like I never saw myself being in any kind of professional industry. I was always like, go for if I can't have tattoos and have any kind of facial hair or dress however I want, then I don't really want it. So I found that spot and I found that space, and now I operate accordingly in it by getting tattoos, and this is temporary. And you might see it a little bit more often now, but you will definitely see me, back at it with the facial hair and everything shortly.
Hmm. Yep. I used to shave my beard in the winter, sort of before I had fully committed to the beard mustache. I had a mustache and goatee for a while, which weren't connected, and I got some feedback that it didn't look terribly good. When I met my wife, she was like, "We can go on another date, but you have to shave." And now she can't imagine me without the mustache, goatee, and beard. I was like, I'm sort of like, every once in a while it gets real scruffy, and I'm just like, this sucks to maintain. I just want to shave the whole thing off. And she's like, I'm a little worried I won't know what you look like if you shave.
Oh, I thought I was gonna scare people, like, like walking up to people being like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "Who are you?" Such
Who is
a
this child I see before me?
huh?
Who is this child I see before me?
Yeah, they're like, "Who's this younger version?" But no, yeah, I've definitely, people have been like taken back by it, because again, it was such a part of my identity, from the time that I started growing it until now. I got the thumbs up from, as from some people. So um, it's okay. I feel like I'm like, all right, now I'm not going to hide behind this, this facial hair that I have, but I do miss it. I do definitely miss having my facial hair. Because it was like, I have like drawings. Like, this is like TMI. I have drawings from when like I was a kid, being like, this is what I want to look like in the future, or like, when I'm older, I'll have like longer hair, a goatee, and a mustache, like, tattoos. I was very much of like a punk rock metal kid. So I was like, this is what it's gonna be. And now that I'm older, it doesn't also necessarily need to be that all the time. So I cut my hair and I shave every once in a while, but still like getting tattoos, and still doing the alt thing, and working in industries where I can do that, and yeah, that's how it'll always be.
I'll be honest, at this point, living in Seattle for so long, it feels weird to say alt. It just doesn't feel alt. It's
Yeah,
just here.
yeah. I mean, I hear the people being like, "Oh, I don't have tattoos," or I don't do the like normalized Pacific Northwest kind of thing. So
Yeah,
uh,
it's where the clean edge look becomes the outlier.
it is, yeah. Like people are like starting to be like, well, like the people are like, "Well, you don't have tattoos." They're like, "No, I choose not to have tattoos." As it's like,
That's
no,
the statement.
yeah, it's a state. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people would be like, "Oh, like." I joined the Elks Lodge at one point, and visited an Elks Lodge it was like Long Beach, and I remember sitting at the bar with the person I was my partner at the time, and they were like heavily tattooed as well, and I could just hear the people down the bar just like being like, "Oh, I don't know what they're gonna do with their lives with these tattoos and like all this stuff," and now I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, we're the ones like running the companies and owning the companies, and working in these high end or high positioned uh, places, and then doing all this stuff, and like eventually, you're gonna have to deal with it, because that's how it's gonna be.
Genji says, I don't have tattoos and prefer to stay clean shaven, but if I don't have to go into the office, I dress and accessorize any way I like. I fully support that.
Yeah,
I would go even further to say, I think accessorizing even when you go into the office is a great way to express yourself without having to have tattoos or facial hair.
no, I mean outfits, glasses, jewelry, stuff like that. That's all.
A weird watch.
Yeah, a watch.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
Funky
it's
socks.
yeah. I think it's like honestly, I never really wanted to work in an office or a cubicle, but I definitely would support, being like, I would fully support, if it was my office, I'd be like, wear whatever you want. Like, this is work comfortably.
I'll be honest, I mostly am too lazy to bother with any sort of accessorizing or even a nice shirt. I just wear a t-shirt and jeans to go to work. Back when I used to work in an office, and now that I work from home, it's always kind of been the same thing. And like these streams are usually the nicest that I dress because for one thing, I don't want my various clubs and companies to be advertised on my graphic T-shirts, right? Like these are my most neutral clothes. Also happen to be my best clothes. I don't
Oh,
have any piercings or tattoos or anything like that.
yeah.
This is like my facial hair is my sole personal expression point.
And I'm mostly just flannel t-shirts and jeans.
Yeah.
Like that's yeah. I'm not from the Pacific Northwest. I've lived here for 20 years and I've slowly become your typical Pacific Northwest person. So people say that, like maybe I don't wear a uniform, but sometimes I think I do wear a uniform. But it's functional
Yeah.
up here too. It's just, I mean, I'm partly out, always outdoors and partly indoors all the time. And I dress accordingly.
Genji has replied, I want to start wearing tinted lip balms. I just bought my first one ever over the weekend. Rock on, Genji. That sounds
Nice.
like a great
Yeah.
way to accessorize.
And I think that should be more of a thing.
Yeah.
Tinted lip balm, totally functional, and you're accessorizing.
So, my personal style has been described by a friend as the somewhat disreputable local warlock, because like I wear either band t-shirts or like I'm currently wearing a distillery t-shirt, blue jeans with the hems rolled up because I'm really short, brightly colored Converse, and in the winter I've been wearing an old overcoat, and I apparently just look like a disreputable warlock. It works for me.
And living up here
Show
in the
me a
Pacific
reputable
Northwest,
warlock.
yeah, there should be more of that. I have a friend that wears a cloak now, and he's like, I'm trying to bring back the cloak. He's got this big,
Yeah.
like felt green cloak that he wears, and he's got long red hair. He's extremely Welsh, so he is pretty much a warlock for sure. But yeah, he's we're trying to bring it back as much as possible. It looks good, but yeah, it's very fitting.
That's badass.
It is really badass too. He's got this thick accent. He looks like he's like straight out of Lord of the Rings.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The Welsh really sells it. Although I guess I don't know how true this is, but apparently the Hobbits sound like they're from the West Country.
Okay.
Like to like apparently it's sort of grating to like people in the UK to watch the Lord of the Rings because they sound like farmers or something, which like that seems in character. Like that doesn't seem like a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does feel like they are farmers.
But hear me out. Imagine if the hobbits were from Yorkshire and they spent the entire movie talking like this. Because that would be hilarious to me. Like, if you've ever watched Time Team, just imagine, like, a quartet of, like, 4 foot tall Phil Hardings wandering around. That would be hilarious to me.
I think, yeah.
I think it was a missed opportunity that we didn't have any barbershop quartet showstopper numbers from the Hobbits.
And yeah, Sam is a gardener in
Yeah, Sam is a gardener, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it seems appropriate to me. I don't know why it would be a problem. It's just accents, but I imagine there's probably something grating there because they probably didn't do their full-on research. But it's Middle Earth. Like, what kind of realism do you want with accents when it's not even related to the UK?
No, it's like being like, we should just change it, and they should be from like Yonkers in New York, and see, how different it is. Let's give them like an East Coast accent, and then hear what people say.
Now I'm imagining Sam going, "No, I can't take the ring, but I can carry you."
Yeah.
I can carry use.
Yeah, use. It's got to be use.
Yeah. I'm doing a lot of like.
Hey.
Well, and that comes around to why are the dwarves always Scottish or Welsh, depending on which adaptation. And it's like, I don't think Gimli would sound quite the same with any other accent.
No, you can like close your eyes. Yeah, and you're like, okay, English accent. Okay, Hobbit or dwarf for sure.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if Gimli, son of Gloin, was from somewhere in Appalachia?
I
Yeah.
was totally gonna say like the Midwest, like yeah, like Fargo, like yeah,
Sorry there.
yeah,
Oh, he's twitching because or really Canadian.
like a boot all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try to do any accents.
No, I'm horrible
I
at
think that's dangerous.
that. I just sound Australian no matter what I do. So
That would be really funny. Imagine if just all the people in Lord of the Rings talked like they were from Australia and New Zealand.
yeah.
Gandalf with an Australian accent is in my head the funniest thing.
I
I
love
mean,
it.
that would be like the most appropriate because they filmed in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all the extras, just like all the orcs, they just have a New Zealand accent because they're all from there. Except for like the head orc. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like they probably brought in some actors, but I imagine a lot of those actors were extras that were just people who were like nearby. I don't know how
mean,
I don't know how that works. Maybe we
it
should
was
have somebody from the movie industry on and just like ask them questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to be more important than we are before we start inviting people from random other industries on to talk to us.
maybe, but it is sort of a running joke that if you were over 6 foot tall in Wellington in 2001, you would practically get kidnapped off the street to be an extra. And I find that
Really?
to be sort of like a funny joke that New Zealanders tell.
Because they really were just trying to find everyone they could who was tall for the orcs and probably
Yeah.
the elves, maybe.
Yeah.
And the elves, and also
Even though canonically elves are short, right?
I mean, it depends on the source material. Tolkien doesn't really talk about how tall or short the elves are. I know that they're taller than the hobbits because Frodo is always looking up toward Legolas. But also,
Oh yeah,
Legolas-
but hobbits are literally half-sized people, right?
Yeah.
Like 3.5, 4 feet tall.
yeah. Um, the town librarian was the Witch King.
Oops. Yeah, we both tried to show that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
And also, yeah, several extras body doubles and size perspective actors in the Lord of the Ring movies were originally from New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, we're just turning this into Lord of the Ring commentary. I think
Yeah,
we've
no, totally.
we've fully revealed our true colors on our nerdy media preferences.
Also, most of the writers of the Rohirrim were women because they needed as many people capable of riding horses as possible, and most of them turned out to be women.
Yeah, for some reason, equestrians are predominantly women, I guess. Except that like all racing jockeys are men, I think. Like, or like not all, but like
and short,
the vast
and
majority,
small.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're all like hobbits.
yeah, and small. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a bizarre. I don't even want to extrapolate on why that might be.
I'm gonna go with weight on the horse, but yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that.
Oh, for the small jockeys, for sure. But then, like
yeah.
on the other hand, you would think you'd have an easier time finding really lightweight people among the women. So why are jockeys men? Or maybe I just have that wrong. Maybe they're not anymore. Only
There
men.
might not. I don't know. I don't follow equestrian sports.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
The most I know about horses is if you are walking beside one in a barn, you have to put your hand on the horse so that they know that you're there and won't accidentally squish you against the wall of the barn.
Yeah.
And also don't sneak up on them from behind.
Yeah.
These are good things to know about horses, by the way.
Also,
You don't need to know much about horses, but don't scare a horse.
Yeah.
And also, if you are a small child being lifted up by your parent to pet the nose of a draft horse, don't stick your hand in its nostril.
Oh. Nope.
Seems like a very little kid thing to do, though.
It is a very little kid thing to do.
My
Yeah.
brother was, I think, 2 or 3 at the time, and if my dad hadn't had lightning reflexes, um, that horse would have just bitten his hand. I
Oh, that's what happens. Well, that
yeah,
makes sense.
I don't blame the horse at all, but it is a great story to tell to his friends and partners upon meeting them, because it's just a great story.
No, yeah, I don't hang around a lot of horses, and yeah, I would be kind of afraid, and not like afraid of the horse, but definitely no sneaking up on them, always touching them. I wouldn't really like. I'd be, don't stick your hand. I'd tell my child not to stick their hand inside the nostril of the horse too.
Yeah, I mean,
Seems like wise advice.
Yeah,
there's also that thing where like children just do things, like
they do.
they don't have like any like rationale behind it. They just do it.
No,
It's like, why did you do that? I don't know. And that's
Yeah.
a genuine answer.
I feel like as an adult, I'm supposed to pass the knowledge on to the child, because children learn from mistakes, and they can also like learn from serious mistakes, but also you know get your hand mangled in the process, and we're trying to not do that as much as possible. So yeah, I think that's our responsibility as adults that have children, is to pass that on to them.
But they probably learn better from experience than by listening to whatever you have to say.
Oh, I mean, touching the hot pan is definitely a good way to learn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I definitely learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
I think probably a lot of people did.
I
wasn't above
learned-
that.
I learned the hard way when I was fairly young that just because a fire has been out for a while doesn't mean that the grate will have cooled down.
Yep.
For most
Yep,
of the
I learned
summer,
that too.
I had a line and like the like squiggles off of the handle of a grate because fire had been out for a couple of hours. I went and grabbed it, and the grate held enough heat to almost sizzle when my hand touched it.
Yep. No, that's definitely true.
Bartlemy says, I love this new spinoff. Ask distillers about general horse knowledge. Yeah. Sometimes we just let the conversation go whichever way it happens to go. Here's a fun fact. Genji says, I learned by seeing in person that horses can roll on their backs like cats and dogs.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen it. That sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
It is extremely funny to see like a Shire or a Clydesdale just sort of like flop over and like scratch its back on the ground, because like it is like, oh hey, that's like a dog, except it weighs over 1,000 pounds and it has feet the size of dinner plates.
Yes.
Yeah, and like, how does it get its feet back under it at the end? Like, I'd probably just like bend them and roll over. But like, I've never seen it. I don't know how that works. I'm sometimes amazed by the way my dog moves. Like when she's decided to stand up, she kind of just like kicks off the ground and she's just standing in like a tenth of a second. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I swear our dog can just levitate upward and over. Like she'll be like standing like a couple feet away from the couch, and there will be a noise and she will just suddenly be on the couch. Like no movement, legs straight, just suddenly on the couch. Like
like, is it sort of like a boing or just levitation?
I swear it's like levitation, because there's no like dropping down and flexing. It's just suddenly she's there.
I don't know about 1,000-pound horse doing that, but yeah, like a little dog, I could see that. I used to have Chihuahuas that would do something like that too. But then I had a bulldog and it couldn't do that. So I think it's a breed specific.
Our dog is a pity mix. She weighs 60 something pounds, and she just
Oh wow, all muscle.
pretty much.
Fast twitch muscles.
She's also an enormous baby about a lot of things. She doesn't like the rain. If it's raining, you'll open up the door and she'll just
Oh yeah, like what are you making me do?
Yeah, our dog has such a judgy, like, what do you want face, like a lot of the time.
I love
Then
so in the lodge. One of our emojis is a picture of Doug's dog in a raincoat, and it is simultaneously adorable and hilarious.
oh, that's right. We made it into an emote. Hang on, let me see if I can like find it real quick and maybe project it. Or I don't know, just join the lodge and you'll find out. That's probably
Yeah.
like genuinely, I'm not even like, hey, just join the lodge. That's genuinely the fastest way for you to actually see what it looks like. It'll take me way too long right now. Uh yeah, by the way, Alex, I've been trying to get you to join the Whiskey Lodge, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it again now.
Oh, I
You
know.
should join the Whiskey Lodge Discord because it's a fun place to hang out, and we have a lot of distillers who chat frequently in there, and it's a fun place to be.
I just it's always in the back. I'm sorry, it's always in the back of my mind. I'm like I don't really hang out on computers very much.
That
Um,
makes sense.
I'm very technology declined, or like I'm not very good at it, and so I tend to not do that as much. But yeah, you're right. I should do it more often. Um,
The
should,
biggest selling
but
points, in my personal opinion, perhaps for you, is that Bartolome and Joe are there.
yeah, yeah. No, they're like really good at it.
And Adam from Lost Lantern,
Yes,
and Brendan Carty from Cologne, and who else can I come up with off the top of my head? Anna Hins from Westland.
Oh yeah. Uh,
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
We got a lot of industry people.
Yeah,
There's a few other. We've got a Chinese distiller opening
yes.
a distillery in Shanghai who's coming to the Pacific Northwest at the beginning of March.
that's cool.
I'm gonna. He's also gonna make gin. I should send him to visit you. Actually,
Yeah,
he's already gonna be in town.
Yeah.
yeah. Tell them to come by for
Yep.
sure.
On the note of random topics of conversation, anytime I see a distillery with two stills next to each other, you can probably see where I'm going with this. Like Alex's distillery, like lots of distilleries really have two stills next to each other. I don't know if I could possibly pull it off. I don't know that I have the personality for it, but I want to do between two stills, the
Oh,
interview show. I want to show up at distilleries and ask distillers random off the walls leading questions and just see what happens.
no, I honestly I think that would be pretty good. People would get a big kick out of that. Two Ferns is really good.
Yeah, I don't know that I could pull it off though. It will take a tremendous amount of effort for me mentally to pull
Oh,
that off.
so many takes. I would just be laughing too much. Like I don't know if I could keep character, like keep the best face.
That's the thing. The best of those interviews are where they like sort of take the same like they sort of like play into it, right? Like
Oh
Yeah,
it's sort of like being opposed to the rude questions in a lighthearted way.
Oh, I think it was Obama that was like, I could have you arrested, It's just like
I do like the ones where they give it back to as much as they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't let them. Like some of them are just like, oh my god, but some of them are like I think it was like Brad Pitt and like Keanu Reeves. Those are pretty good. But yeah, there definitely should be something like that for distillers. Not take it so serious.
Yeah. I'll do my best to claim that and do something with it. We'll see what I can pull off. I visit enough distilleries at this point, or at least I'm scheduled to visit enough distilleries at this point. I think a lot of the people that I've met seem like they probably would be down for that. And I think actually Moose Allen probably would have thought that was hilarious. And I missed an opportunity by not asking him to do that because I was there for like 6 hours. We were pretty much just sitting in our room bullshitting. I could have been like, "Hey, you want to go to the stills and like do this?"
Right. You get caught
I
just
need
like
to
like this
I need
now.
to
Now
work on this.
like yeah, now
Yeah.
we're not even talking about work. We're just talking.
Yeah, that's right. It's all on recording, but but definitely in that case, a lot of the sort of wildest conversations happened after we cut. I ended up telling him about that time I went out with you and Bartlome in Seattle. It was a
Always,
wild night.
yeah, it's always fun.
Bartlome still gives me shit about that.
uh, it wasn't. It was wild. It wasn't like that bad, but
No, it's a good hearted,
yeah,
it was big gin on the house all night was pretty much the story.
yeah. You can really get swept away by
Yeah.
being a product producer, and like people always want to like get you to try new things. They want you to like, oh, I made this with your product, you got to try it, and like all of a
Mhm.
sudden, it can get away from you. um
I have very little experience with using a spit cup. I'm a little self-conscious about it. It's like spitting in public is weird. But going to Denver, I'm going to be getting lots of samples of things I imagine, and I'm going to have to keep my wits about me. So I'm going to have to get comfortable with using a spit cup.
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it was new to me too for a minute, because like I automatically I'm like, yeah, I'm just drinking, like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, now I have to like, no, I'm like, don't like spit it out. But it's it took a minute to remember, and now it's just and that's all I do now. So
Yeah.
it gets a lot easier.
Do you find anything missing when you spit? Like, do you miss out on the finish or anything like that?
Not necessarily. I just like switch it around my mouth a bit and then like spit it out, but just like I still you still get the full flavor, you still get a little bit of that burn, like it's just you're not ingesting it, and that's always a plus.
Yeah. Bartlome, I'm not going to put that comment up because you have nothing to apologize for. Everybody was very well behaved and everybody did take care of me. And that meme was hilarious. So I don't feel bad about that at all.
We're all adults.
I mean, everyone has had like situations where they haven't realized how far along they've gotten until like that moment. Like the first time I went to one of the Virginia Spirits Expos, I was walking around fine, talking, being coherent, clearly. Like actually got business cards from distillers to talk about things. And then I sat down and ate. And when I stood up, I was suddenly uh, in far worse shape than I thought I was.
Yeah, it seems to always go that way, right? Especially at these things where you're drinking, you're trying things at a rate faster than normally, right? These expos have a way of like you spend 2 minutes at one place, you go to the next, you're like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm having a half ounce, a quarter ounce. They usually pour a quarter ounce. I'm having a quarter ounce sample of this, and then half an hour later, you've had 16 quarter ounces, and you do that for 3 hours, and yeah, it's
Well,
dangerous.
Yeah.
and
You've got to
especially
definitely dump the things that aren't like.
yeah.
Never ever throw it back when you're going to one of these things. That's
yeah.
advice for going to a spirits or cocktail or any sort of expo like that.
That was always
Don't
like my
feel
problem.
Yeah, don't feel any pressure to finish what you've been poured. It feels
Yeah.
bad to waste liquid, but what helps to remember is that they have plenty. They set aside this budget of liquid for this event, and they absolutely expect people not to finish it. And if you're gonna get sick anyway, you didn't
Yeah.
help anything by finishing it.
Yeah, no,
It's just not worth it.
Gets you into trouble sometimes, but it's you got to be responsible, and you got to kind of like listen to yourself. And for a long time I was like, well, that's alcohol abuse, is like dumping it or whatever. It's like it's just a waste. But now it's now it's just that's the part of it. And, understanding that it's you don't have to finish it. You don't have to you don't even have to drink any of it. Because like the most thing I miss about drinking, the one thing is the flavor. Like I just miss all the flavors of different things, and so it's still get that with but again, you don't have to like drink every little drop.
Yeah, and that was a lesson well learned,
Yeah.
particularly because there weren't any particularly dire consequences other than I spent the car ride home sort of half asleep and feeling queasy.
Yeah.
And
I've been there a lot, and yeah, it's something that's what I don't miss is like hangovers and overconsumption and all that. It's but I still miss being like, oh, I want to try everything. You walk into a place and you're like, oh my god, I want to taste everything. So
Yeah. So if you taste and spit enough things, do you still get a buzz?
no,
Just from
not
like absorbing through the
necessarily.
mouth.
Yeah, no, not really. I
No,
don't.
that's
I
good.
don't. I
That's
don't.
good news.
Yeah, I don't taste that much. Like I'll like at this point now, big gin. Don't really have to taste it. Like maybe like once a month if I think something weird is going on. But other than that, I'm it's all the same. And when I don't necessarily go out very much anymore, so I'm not like doing that kind of thing anymore either.
The
So
irony of being a co-owner of a bar is that you
I
don't go
know.
out anymore because you're
Yeah.
you're at your own place.
I'm always either at the distillery or at the bar.
yeah, it's sort of weird that like all the people that I know who are like into spirits as a hobby or in the industry don't really go out. Like I haven't been to a bar in almost 2 years now.
No, it's for those people that don't work in the industry, that don't have a hand in it. That's what the bars and restaurants are for. Those that we're already. I mean, those that work 8 hours at a bar don't really want to be at a bar necessarily. So we tend
Mm-hmm.
to be the ones that are like, yeah, I'm gonna go home and watch movies or go hiking or do other things as much as possible. Enjoy that kind of stuff.
There's an idea.
I
We
honestly
should.
don't know when the last time I went to a bar was. And I guess would I count the whiskey bar that I go to, the Barrel Thief? It's like kind of a bar, but it's definitely more of a taste a few whiskeys the way that I would at home,
Yeah,
and have a few snacks.
I can.
Actually, I think I haven't been to a bar probably since a year ago at the Seattle Cocktail Week where I was out with Alex and Bartlemy.
So the last time I went to a bar was the company holiday party in 2021. We went to a pool hall and bar called Crossroads, um, and that was in 2021. So it has been more than 2 years.
Yeah, I think whenever I drink out, it's usually at a restaurant, right? I have a
Yeah.
cocktail out at a restaurant every now and then.
And see, I don't even really do that because most of the restaurants around here, if they are serving alcohol, if I'm going to buy anything, it'll be a beer. And I don't really drink beer. So, good night, Genji. It was good seeing you.
Good night, Genji. Thanks for joining. Yeah, we definitely have sort of dragged out the end of this conversation quite a bit. We've just gone in a few
Yeah.
random directions. Honestly, it might be time to kind of wind this down because as much as I'd love to keep hanging out with you guys, we are burning airtime. So
So,
we can only
Getting kind
keep
of
the
cold
patience
in
of our
the
channel.
distillery,
So
too.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's probably
So,
time to sign off. So what's your favorite, Phil?
I've got to say the McCarthy's just because I love McCarthy's so much, and it's got that like really nice, like dark chocolatey sort of like, and layered with the smoke. I really like it. I think the only one that I have any in the glass of is the standard, and it's not very much.
Nice.
It's a tough call for me between the Clear Creek 4-year, and the one that's American single malt, then finished in PX sherry. Like, I think on the initial taste, the pear brand, the apple brandy one. I said pear brandy. I think the apple brandy one, like, feels more like cohesive and everything. But to my whiskey drinker's palate, I think the one finished in PX sort of has more staying power. So between the two, in a session like this, I think this one wins my favorite, but just by a hair.
Yeah. I think when I was drinking was the PX one. The single malt aged in PX was my favorite. It's just, it's so unique and so like complex. I didn't, you don't even have to like build a cocktail out of it. It's just almost a cocktail in its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, with our favorites in hand, it's, I think, time for us to cheers and sign off. Alex, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I'm glad that you stuck around with us for all this extra time so that we could just, talk about random stuff for a bit after we were done talking about Big Gin. I learned a lot about gin. I hope the audience learned a lot about gin. Sorry, what was that?
I said this is what we normally do. We just hang out and talk.
That's right. Yeah, this didn't feel too terribly different from when I just hang out at the distillery for an afternoon. Yeah. So really, we're just bums that hang around stills. That's what it is.
I mean, doing this kind of stuff and like talking to people, it always comes back to like maybe we should start a podcast. Or like,
hey, that's a good idea. I think I know a guy who could help me with that.
So it's like, it's just like a thing. This is just, putting that conversations that we have on the internet now.
Yep. We got to save a little bit for us. So
a little bit.
What should we cheers? To conversations and good flavors.
Oh yeah, definitely.
May we continue to have plenty of both.
Cheers.
Cheers.